And if you all have any questions or anything that you are going to have for us, we are going to be monitoring the chat. So if there's already some burning desires and questions for some of our amazing speakers today, feel free to add those into the chat now. We're going to have a running document where we're going to be putting all of the questions in and answering those in a clear and concise manner in the order that they were received. So if you all that are on the call now, which there already seem to be 18 of us, which is exciting, we are anticipating having over 80 folks here today. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. We did share an email with everyone this morning that we're asking folks to join in and some collaboration for this workshop. So I'm going to actually just play a little bit of music in the background while everyone joins so we can just feel a cool vibe while we're getting ready for this. And at 11:15, we will go ahead and get started. Thanks to everyone joining. While you're joining, make sure you mute your microphone, please. If you would like to add your name, your organization, and your email into the chat, we would love that. We are already recording, but the workshop will start promptly at 11:15. So we're giving everyone about 13 minutes to join. My name's Tara Pascarosa with Clean Virginia Waterways. So if you have any questions that you already know you want to ask our amazing presenters today, please go ahead and put those in the chat too. We're going to be taking those questions from you all after each person presents this morning. And we've got a running document where we'll be taking those questions and answering them after each presenter. So feel free to start putting those questions in the chat now. I'm going to play some really chill music for everybody while we're waiting until 11:15. And if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat and also start and adding your questions and your name, email, and organization. I came from nothing, but not nothing like nothing. We're just gonna have some chill music till 11:15, y'all. Nothing like called every name in the book, but for every second, yes, I never gave a second look. I tell myself, don't let it get to me, cause if the best they got is not impressing me, and there's no reason they should get the best of me while they were aiming at my words and missing the rest of me. See. So how can I stop all these critics from their side? All right, we are up to 21 folks that have joined so far. Feel free to put your name and your organization and email in the chat. Also, if you have questions for us already, you can put those in the chat. Singing all about a thing, 'cause everyone gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds, singing sweet songs. Hello, pure and true. Saying it's my message to you. Singing the water, power freely. Hey, everybody that is joining. Thank you for being here. We're going to get promptly started at 11:15. So just enjoy Bob Marley in the background while we are collectively letting everyone join. We're looking forward to having over 80 participants today, which is awesome. Thanks to those of you that had registered for in-person and joining us virtually. We're super excited to get this workshop on the road today. So while you're joining, please put in your name, your organization, and your email. This is already being recorded. So again, we'll get started promptly at 11:15. Thanks for joining early. We appreciate you all. Hi, y'all. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started at 11:15. In the meantime, please add your name, email, and organization. And also, if you have any questions that you already know you want to ask some of our amazing esteemed speakers today, feel free to add those in the chat now, as that's the format we'll be following for the workshop today. Is if you have questions, you're going to put them in the chat, and we're going to ask those questions to the presenters as they finish up their presentations. So please go ahead and do that when you get a chance. Throughout the day, we'll be taking those questions in real time and making sure that all of them are addressed in a timely manner after the presenters are done speaking. My heart says follow through. But I know now that if you haven't already, please add your name, email, and organization in there. I know there's 26 folks that have joined so far. So just take a minute now to put your name, your organization, and your email in the chat. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining, Brian. We've got Adriana. We've got Karina and Virginia. Rebecca's on. We've got Joe Hunt. Joseph Barnes, thanks for joining, Kelly. We've got Abigail on board and Will. So any other folks that haven't added their information yet, thanks for adding your information, Wendy and Robin. We appreciate you all very much. We'll keep the flow going until 11:15 and then we'll get started. Make sure you get your coffee or tea or snacks ready. And it's a full moon today, y'all. So manifest good things. There's a lot of energy out there today. We're going to bring some positive energy out there with the Stormwater workshop today. Like I said, it's been 3 years since I'm knocking on your door. Knock some more. Is it easy? I wanna know now. Thanks to everybody for joining. We appreciate you very much. Please be sure to put your name, organization, and email in the chat. Welcome, Audrey. Welcome, Courtney. Oyoranki, I believe. If I pronounced that incorrectly, I apologize, but welcome. We will get started in about 5 minutes. I'm going to close off my camera for just a second and refresh our presentation. We have a few updates from one of our esteemed speakers in there, so that's exciting. I don't want to wait for your love. I don't want to wait in vain for your love.
Oh, I don't wanna, I don't wanna, I don't wanna, I don't wanna, I don't wanna wait till then. No, I don't wanna, I don't wanna, I don't wanna, I don't wanna wait till then.
Oh, Joe has a great idea. He wants to put trivia questions in the chat. Feel free, Joe. Put in a few trivia questions in there. And we can see if people want to answer any of those while we're waiting for the next few minutes and listening to a little Bob Marley. And if you haven't already, we've got about 30 folks on the line. Please be sure to add your name, organization, and email. And if you have any questions that you want to ask our speakers today, feel free to start putting those in real time. Got about 4 more minutes and we're going to get started right on time. I'll let a few of you know while we are waiting for others to join. We want you to put in your name and your email and your organization, any questions you might have. And also, we're going to make sure that if you do have questions in real time after each presenter, we're going to have you raise your hand, but we do want to make sure we get all your questions put into our documents as well. So it'd be great if before you raise your hand, maybe you put your question in chat so we can add that to our workshop question document that we're going to share with everybody and get those answers to you. Just to let everyone know too, we are taking notes and recording this call. So we will announce that again in a couple minutes, but just want everyone to be aware that this is being recorded today. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. And great job on the first trivia question. Which plastic items ban fully comes into effect in Virginia on July 1st, 2026? Bam. Will answered expanded polystyrene, aka styrofoam. You get a gold star, Will. We're stoked for you. Any other trivia questions anyone wants to put in the chat? Go for it.
Just to give credit where it's due, Brianna actually got it with EPS. I was just upvoting.
Indeed, she did. Thank you, Will. Thank you. Brianna, you get 2 gold stars. We appreciate you. And maybe when you're in your Virginia Beach next time, we can hook you up with a CBW t-shirt or something. If anyone has any other trivia questions they want to throw in there in the next minute, feel free. And then we are going to get started in 1 minuto. I'm sure other folks will be filtering in the next few minutes, but we are going to get promptly started at 11:15, and we're really excited to have over 30 people in here already. We anticipate over 80. So let me know if you have any questions. We're going to ask everyone puts those in the chat. And just in 1 moment, I'm going to stop Bob. So if you have any last minute snacks or drinks you want to grab, go ahead and grab those. Be sure to put your name, email, and organization in the chat. All right. It is almost go time, and it is officially go time. So good morning, everybody. We are so excited to have you with us today. I will be your facilitator for the 8th annual Stormwater and Pollution Prevention Workshop. My name's Tara Pascarosa. I am the Development and Event Manager for Clean Virginia Waterways. I'm going to cover just a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to hand it over to our esteemed director, Christina, as well as Zach, our amazing program director. Christina is the program director, and Zach is our marine debris strategy director. But so what we want everyone to do today is enjoy the workshop. It's virtual, it's exciting, it's fun. We are going to ask that you put your name as well as your email and organization in the chat if you haven't done that already. We want to let everyone know that this workshop is being recorded. So not only are you going to be able to reference this at a later time, but the notes and recording will be shared with you as well as posted on YouTube, where we have our previous stormwater workshops. We ask that if you have questions today, that you please add them in our chat in real time, and our awesome team will be compiling all of those questions into a document, and we'll be asking those to the speakers and presenters today. We will have several opportunities after each presentation where attendees will be able to ask these questions, which will be in the chat, and discuss items of interest with our speakers today. I want to give a special thanks to Joseph, who is our marine debris prevention specialist, and Emily, our education and outreach coordinator, for helping to facilitate our lively discussions and questions today, and also running through this with me yesterday and this morning to get things running smoothly. And I also want to give a huge thank you to the Coastal Zone Management Program. We've got folks on there today. They are what makes all this happen for Clean Virginia Waterways. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Christina Trapani and Zach Huntington. Christina is our program director of Clean Virginia Waterways, and she has spent more than a decade working with sea turtle and marine mammal strandings at the Virginia Aquarium. She led her first international coastal cleanup in 2002, beginning her relationship with Clean Virginia Waterways. Some of her work CVW includes a statewide balloon litter study, a statewide marine debris monitoring program, the Keep It Beachy Clean Litter Prevention Program, and co-founding the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network. In addition, Zach is our fearless leader of the Marine Debris Strategy, and he's our director there for Clean Virginia Waterways. He is an experienced environmental researcher and analyst with a background in communicating the impact of plastic pollution on people and our planet. His work focuses on using data and graphical analysis to identify environmentally and economically stable strategies to address waste-related challenges. Zach has a Master of Business Administration in Sustainability and Environmental Compliance and a Bachelor in Natural Resources and Conservation. And I will turn it over to Zach and Christina, and I'll go ahead and put it on our next slide. And again, a big shout out to everyone for joining. We look forward to a really amazing workshop today. Thanks so much, all.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today for our 8th annual Clean Virginia Waterways Stormwater and Plastic Pollution Workshop. I want to second what Tara just said. Big shout out to the Clean Virginia Waterways staff for putting this together, especially Tara. She's been a rock star getting this all put together and finding some wonderful speakers for today. And then, of course, the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program and NOAA for supporting this adventure that we call Clean Virginia Waterways, as well as this Stormwater and Plastic Pollution Workshop. Let's see, so next slide. My name is Christina. As Tara said, I am the program director. If you are not familiar with Clean Virginia Waterways, our mission is to enhance the health of Virginia's water resources through pollution prevention, education, and stewardship activities involving Virginians from the classroom to the boardroom. So basically what we are doing is working really hard to keep plastic pollution out of our waterways. If you are familiar with Clean Virginia Waterways, then let me go over a lot of big changes that have happened since the last stormwater workshop. Our fearless founder and first executive director, Katie Register, she went ahead and retired last year. And Zach took over for a while and has taken a step in a left or right direction, however you want to see it, as the Marine Debris Strategy Director. And they put me in charge of this organization last year. So it's been quite the privilege. I've been working with Clean Virginia Waterways for over 20 years as a volunteer and then a contractor. So Clean Virginia Waterways actually ended up leaving Longwood University last year at the end of June. And we moved our office here to Virginia Beach, where we are on Laskin Road in a tiny little office behind a brick building, just a mile or so from the beach. And it's been a great experience so far. And that's the long and the short of it. We've hired some new staff, as you've already met them, and looking forward to what the future holds. Next slide, please. Back up. There you go. Okay, so this is the stormwater workshop. So I wanted to share this experience that I had as it relates to stormwater. A few months ago, I was trying to catch an early morning paddle in my favorite little close to home waterway back there at Owls Creek behind the Virginia Aquarium. It was very apparent very quickly that something was different about the water. Usually Owls Creek, you know, there's a little bit of litter here and there. There's a lot of boat traffic in that area. Rudy Inlet is right down the waterway from where I was. There's head boats and fishing boats and jet skis and fishing centers, marinas, restaurants. So it's not unusual to see litter. However, on this day, my quick little paddle turned into a 2-hour cleanup as it had rained the day before and had washed everything apparently from the nearby neighborhoods into this waterway. It was very discouraging. And I think I've all experienced this in one way or another. Stormwater, I think there is a disconnect for many people with regards to how the stormwater connection, like how it works from your neighborhood or your workplace to the closest waterways. And I think as educators and plastic pollution prevention specialists, we have a lot of work to do in getting that message out. And I know we're doing it, and I know we're going to get there. You know, a lot of the storm drains have the little placards that say that this storm drain leads to this waterway. But I think education is key in making sure that people understand that connection. We actually purchased a Enviroscapes watershed model, which we can take now to outreach events. And that actually shows literally from inland to the coastal environment how trash can travel. So again, I'm a big education person, and I'm really excited about this opportunity to teach the public about that storm drain connection. Okay, next slide, please. All right, you've probably already seen this slide. Plastic pollution is on the rise, whether we like it or not. My understanding is a lot of this is due to the fact that we are switching over to alternative energies. We're using wind power and solar power and electric vehicles. And so the fossil fuel industry is looking for other ways to sell their product. And plastic is made from fossil fuels. So I guess it makes sense to them to increase that plastic production and look for ways to sell that product. And unfortunately, recycling of plastic is not the greatest system that we have these days. Okay, next slide, please. We are just beginning the International Coastal Cleanup season here internationally, actually. International Coastal Cleanup Day is September 20th. Clean Virginia Waterways leads the International Coastal Cleanup here in Virginia. We've already had a few cleanups, and we are expecting many, many more. We encourage our cleanup site captains and volunteers to collect data. This data can be used in an assortment of ways. If you have not checked out the Ocean Conservancy and all the great work that they do, including the International Coastal Cleanup, I encourage you to, if you're doing a cleanup, even if it's just you walking in the neighborhood, grab your phone, download that Clean Swell app, and collect that data. If you look at the next slide, please, you can see that data is actually really informative and helpful. And I did want to point out with this slide some really positive things. If you're in stormwater or any kind of litter prevention, you know that cigarette butts are almost always the most commonly found item when you're doing a beach cleanup or when you're just walking down the street, to be honest. But in the last few years, we've actually seen cigarette butts fall to second place. Yay, go cigarette butts. If you could go back, please. food wrappers are taking over in Virginia. I'm not sure if it's because cigarette butts are actually on the decline because we've been educating people, or because they're so expensive, or people aren't smoking as much, or they've turned to a different form, such as vaping and e-cigarettes. But either way, I like to see this as a positive thing, that as we are educators and educating the public, that it's reducing cigarette butts. So this is just one of those things that you can kind of glean from collecting that data with the Clean Swell app. Okay, next slide, please. Another positive thing that we just found, and this is unpublished as of right now, but we just finished up our 11-year report on a balloon study that we've been doing, balloon litter on Fisherman Island, which is over on the eastern shore. It's the southernmost island. We've been looking at marine debris on this island since 2014, and we are seeing a decline. And if you didn't know this, we actually were able to change Virginia's law and made it illegal to reduce balloons. So the number of balloons we were finding per mile before the law and after the mile have changed and decreased significantly. So I see that as a positive thing. Again, collecting that data is so important. Okay, next slide, please. All right, we've got some great education campaigns coming out that we're working on right now. As was mentioned in the trivia, EPS will be completely phased out from our restaurants, local small restaurants. The larger restaurants with 20 or more locations have already phased it out. So we are working on getting the word out about this. We're working on a Proud to Be Foam Free campaign where we're going to kind of reward people for refusing foam if you're a consumer, or just not offering foam if you're a restaurant. And we have, especially the smaller restaurants that haven't reached that July 1st deadline yet, but they've gone ahead and taken the initiative to either never use foam or they're phasing it out now. AskHRGreen.org, one of our partners, is really pushing the bring your own to-go container if you have leftovers. So every time you go to the restaurant, this is your latest challenge. Every time you go to a restaurant, if you're not already doing this, grab a container and take it with you and shove your leftovers in there, and skip the foam and the plastic to-go containers. Next slide, please. We are also working on plastic bag fees here in Virginia. In 2020, General Assembly passed a law that allows localities to place a 5-cent fee on plastic bags. It has been a little slow going. Of course, the first few years, COVID kind of put everything on hold. Roanoke City was the first locality in Virginia to pass the ordinance. And since then, we have now 11 localities in Virginia. There's a lot of work going on to try to get more localities to pass this. We have started a work group with our Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network. I'll go over that in just a few minutes, about getting these fees passed. I think ultimately, what we have found out from consumers and our Virginians here is that they'd rather see plastic bags go away completely, and are more in favor of a ban than the fee. So something that we're keeping in mind. I know that plastic bags are probably one of the most irritating things if you're in the stormwater world. So please join us in this attempt to reduce plastic bag litter in Virginia. Next slide, please. Again, the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network, if you are not a member, we encourage you to join. We have meetings every third Tuesday. earthday.org is going to be our next guest speaker. And then we do have these breakout groups. As I mentioned, the plastic bag fee group that's meeting first Tuesday. And then we're starting a polystyrene phase out group. This way we can collaborate and coordinate efforts as we work to reach Virginians about these efforts in reducing marine debris. Joe Barnes is in charge of that, and you have his email right there. And I think I've run over my 10 minutes. Zach, you are up.
Thanks, Christina. So Christina mentioned the changes at CVW, and the reason that we went through this restructuring, it's not only to grow our outreach and our programs, but it's so we can increase our focus on research so that we can better understand how we can collectively address the problems of marine debris and mismanaged solid waste, and how we can get necessary policies implemented here in Virginia. In 2025, our report on the Virginia Litter Fund was quoted in House Joint Resolution 448, and this created a work group to study options to improve funding for the Litter Fund, and we are optimistic this new group will have a positive outcome. I shared information about this report last year at our workshop, and that presentation is up on our YouTube page. Recently, we published an in-depth report on recycling. You can leave it on the last one. We recently published an in-depth report on recycling refund programs. They're also called container legislation or bottle bills. We looked at them around the country and what a recycling refund program could look like here in Virginia. And just a couple high-level takeaways from that report. Recycling refund programs reduce litter, they increase recycling rates, they create jobs, they have a positive impact on the climate, and they reduce the financial burden faced by taxpayers and local governments. And we're hopeful that our research here can help move this conversation forward. And our research and publications page has all of our other research, all of our op-eds, literature reviews, and I'm dropping it in the chat here for everyone. It has, we have 30 years of marine debris research, and we want it to be used. Now, as we see it, public works and stormwater employees are really the front line when it comes to stopping the flow of plastic pollution into our communities and waterways. And as it stands right now, it's nearly an impossible task. We're dealing with the problems of 2025 with policies, laws, and ordinances that were implemented in the 1970s, not to mention that there are 3 million more people living in Virginia now. And one of the reasons that we host this workshop every year is because it's a great opportunity to gather folks and share research and best practices, but it's also extremely important to us as an organization because of what we learn. You all are the experts in this field. What we at CVW learned today, that's going to influence our research far past the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, and you'll hear plenty about that today. So it's no secret that some of the policies we support will cost money to implement, whether it's a recycling refund program or extended producer responsibility for packaging. And the big question is on who should be paying for the necessary infrastructure upgrades and program implementation. And our answer is simple: the industry producing the products. There's been a 7-decade-long campaign by petrochemical industry and the packaged goods industry to shift the responsibility for the end of life of their products to consumers. And this has created solid waste infrastructure and systems that are completely dependent on taxpayer dollars. And this system is just untenable now, evident by the fact that at least 13 curbside recycling programs have ended in Virginia in the last 6 years. And most of these programs, when they end, they are citing the reason as rising costs. And we expect to see more programs close in the near future. So these corporations who are creating these products are profiting in the billions of dollars, while here in Virginia, we can't maintain recycling programs. Our view at CVW is that the economic cost of continuing the status quo is significantly more expensive for Virginia's taxpayers. So the question we're trying to answer right now is, how much does plastic pollution cost Virginia? The cost of plastic pollution, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. There isn't one figure to look at to get our answer, right? When we're talking about recycling refunds, we can look at the number of reverse vending machines that are needed, and that's a direct cost. It's really easy to put figures on things. When we're looking at plastic pollution, we're talking about things like work stoppages at MRFs to cut plastic away from machinery, employee time spent clearing storm drains that are clogged with plastic wrapping around branches, solid waste escaping dumpsters next to storm drains, bales of cotton being contaminated and ruined with plastic, and microplastic pellets escaping plastic production facilities. And many of these are subsidized by taxpayer dollars. And so we're going to be talking a lot about the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan today. But in addition to those questions, I have some other questions for thought. So are you organizing a community cleanup that doesn't receive funding from the Virginia Litter Fund? Have you been counting beverage containers picked up by your volunteers? Do you think a white paper on best management practices for dumpster management would be helpful? Again, you can go to the next slide here, Tara. Again, you're the experts. What kinds of policies or ordinances do you think would be effective that you haven't seen implemented? You can see on the screen, you have contact information for both Christina and I, and we are both always happy and ready to speak about plastics, marine debris, and mismanaged solid waste. Thank you to the team at CVW and CZM to get this organized, and also our presenters who are taking their time out of their day to share their work with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zach and Christina. Big round of applause virtually or however you want to give it. We really appreciate their leadership, and it's an honor to work at Clean Virginia Waterways. So a big shout out. Not only are they knowledgeable, intelligent, but they are kind and open-minded and always up for a challenge. And they have definitely had a challenge over the past few years with transitioning to Virginia Beach, and we are just very thankful to have them as our leaders at Clean Virginia Waterways. So thanks again. If you all have questions, again, please put those in the chat. We're going to be accumulating all those questions throughout the day. And after our next speaker, we're going to open up a little bit of time to ask some questions. If anyone has any burning desire to ask questions right now to Christina or Zach, then I'm going to go ahead and open those. We do have one question that I'm seeing here. So I'll let that be open up to Zach and Christina. What is the greatest plastic challenge along the beaches in the Delmarva area for sea turtles and marine mammals?
You got it, Christina. This is your world.
Yeah. I have not been in the stranding world for about 13 years now. I left in 2013, so 12 years now. But I do recall that balloons really were one of the most ingested items that we would find during sea turtle necropsies. There were random, we didn't see as much ingestion by marine mammals, especially not dolphins. Although there was a Gervais beaked whale that stranded recently in North Carolina that had a foil balloon, I believe. It was a calf. Some of these beaked whales and other species, they don't really have a whole lot of teeth. They use a sucking motion to get their food. So anything that looks like food just kind of goes down the hatch. It wasn't unusual to find little bits and pieces of all kinds of plastic, hard plastic, soft plastic. So that's all bits and pieces of things that have broken up over time in the waterways. So I hope that answers the question. Again, I've been out of that field for quite some time, but I would say anything that looks like jellyfish is going to be your most harmful. Leatherback sea turtles, that's what they live on. They eat half their body weight in jellies every day. So if there's a balloon or a plastic bag or a piece of plastic film floating in the way of their meals, they are not smart enough to tell the difference, unfortunately. I should say their instincts do not tell them the difference. I think they're very smart.
I agree with you. I think that was a great answer. And if you all, like I said at the beginning, and for those of you that just joined, put your name and email and organization in the chat. And if you have questions, please put those in the chat. And we're going to be making sure we address all of the questions after each presenter today. If you have questions for Christina or Zach, please put those in the chat and we will answer them as they come. If anyone has something to add, right? Like Christina said, she's worked and she's very passionate about that field, right? But she is now our director at Clean Virginia Waterways. So if anyone has additional comments to make about the plastic challenges along the beaches for sea turtles and marine mammals, we encourage you to put that in the chat. This is a discussion. We want folks to be involved in this discussion today. We have dedicated an hour for input from everyone in the stormwater community from 12 to 1. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you throughout the day as we are chatting. So put those questions in the chat. Put any answers that you have in the chat. And if you have a burning desire to ask something here on camera, just raise your hand. And our amazing facilitators, Joe and Emily with Clean Virginia Waterways, will make sure that you get a chance to ask that question. I'm just going to open it up for another minute or so to see if anyone has any other questions for Zach and Christina now. But don't worry, they're not going anywhere. They'll be available for questions from 12 to 1 as well. So just give it one more second to make sure there's no other questions. And we will move on to our amazing Rebecca Whalen, who is the Chief Ranger and Visitor Experience at Pocahontas State Park, where many of you that registered to come in person with us, that's where we were going to hold our event. But you all asked and we delivered. We are having this event 100% virtual this year, just like we did during COVID. So we're excited that everyone is here with us today, and maybe next year we can do it in person too. So Rebecca was going to talk a lot more about the park when we first had this presentation in person, but she has worked with the Virginia State Park since 2009. She's been at Pocahontas State Park since 2015. As the Chief Ranger for Visitor Experiences, her primary role focuses on interpretation and environmental education. She and her team have worked with thousands of guests to ensure the protection and appreciation of Virginia's natural, historical, recreational, scenic, and cultural resources. When she's not at work, she enjoys spending time with her son, reading, running, and visiting home in North Carolina. So without further ado, we would like to welcome Rebecca. Rebecca, come on board and show us your beautiful face, and we'll get your presentation started. Are you there, Rebecca? I just chatted with her on email, so I know that she was available to start with us, and now I'm getting another email from her, so let me check. She just lost internet connection, so I guess it's a good thing we're not at Pocahontas State Park, because then we would have all lost it. There she is.
I'm here. Hi, sorry about that.
It's all good. Welcome, Rebecca. You're up.
Okay, yeah, the wilderness of Chesterfield County. You never know when you'll lose internet connection, but I'm not sure what all I missed, but my name's Rebecca Whalen. I'm the Chief Ranger Visitor Experience here at Pocahontas State Park, and I've been at Pocahontas 10 years, and I've been with Virginia State Park since 2009, so quite a while with the agency. A little bit about Pocahontas, if you've not been or familiar with the park. We are the largest state park in Virginia with just under 8,000 acres. We've got about 20 miles, or we are about 20 miles, a heavy population that comes in to visit us. We get just over 1 million visitors a year. Again, just under 8,000 acres. We've got about 100 miles or so combined hiking, biking, equestrian trails. We've got the Visitor Center, which you can see on the screen there, the Land Conservation Corps Museum, pools, all sorts of different facilities here at Pocahontas State Park. And we were built by the Land Conservation Corps. The land before we were a park was considered submarginal at the time. Lots of history of farming on the land.
Hey,
So,
Rebecca, I hate to interrupt you. Do you think maybe if you took your video off, the actual audio might be better? Because it was a little garbly for a second.
perhaps, let's see here. Is that better now, maybe?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
You're welcome. So I'm not sure what you all heard, but basically Pocahontas is a big place with lots of things. And we are one of 43 state parks in the Virginia State Park system. And we, across the agency, across the state park system, are working to reduce our plastic waste and to make plastic pollution awareness part of our mission, incorporate it into our mission. So you can go to the next slide if you want. I think it's just a picture of our lake, which is one of the 3 lakes that we have here. There we go. Figured y'all could use a little nice mental image of Swift Creek Lake, or visual image of Swift Creek Lake. That's, again, one of 3 lakes we have here at the park. But across the state park system, we, again, are reducing our plastic waste. So in our cabins, which we have about 300 cabins across our system, we have installed refillable soap and shampoo containers. So we're not constantly adding little travel size bottles. We've got one big refill station for the soap and shampoo and conditioner. At our events, so far as like our trainings and stuff that we do in-house, we oftentimes, bring our own utensils, bring our own plates, bring our own cups, napkins, all that sort of thing, so that we can wash and not use prepackaged or plastic utensils. We also, thinking about our merchandise, we try to, especially with our beverages that we sell in our gift shops, reduce the amount of beverages that are in plastic containers. And so for like our waters that we sell, they are in aluminum. So we have been intentional with that. We also at our park systems have recycle bins. We have rain gardens, which can help manage runoff from storms, but also kind of at a collection point for pollution. We also have a sustainability working group that is focused on recycling and ways to reduce waste in parks, both from the visitors' experience and also from park. So like one of their big pushes is to look more into Mason electric vehicles, so kind of the overall sustainability. Our friends groups across the state, they have a program where folks can buy an honor or memorial bench, and those benches are made from recycled materials. And then several of our parks have won different travel awards from Virginia Green. So from water conservation to cigarette butt recycling, I know Bear Creek Lake just last year won an award. They were collecting bags for benches. So there's a lot of us across the state that are doing little bits, pieces here and there to help out. At Pocahontas, we have a little over 1 million visitors a year. So quite a highly visited park, and we of course take part in like Clean the Bay Day and National Public Lands Day, so we'll offer some cleanup days and events then. But we have a ton of volunteers that come to the park and do different projects, and one of our projects is cleaning up trash pickups, things like that. So I mean, last year we had about 28,000 volunteer hours. So again, a lot of efforts to do to help keep plastic out of the park or just trash in general. So for Clean the Bay Day last year, we have, as you're looking at, that's Swift Creek Lake, and we also have Beaver Lake and Group Camp 7 Lake. And Beaver Lake feeds into Swift Creek Lake, but we'll do a big either a canoe program to go out and paddle the water. Swift Creek itself is about, well, the lake that we have at the park is about 2 miles long. We've got a little bit of Swift Creek itself, that's another mile. So about 3 miles of navigable water. And we picked up about 60 pounds of trash. That was last year. This year, same stretch of water, we picked up 38 pounds. So I don't know, maybe everyone else upstream has been thinking about reducing waste and keeping their waters clean, or maybe we had a lot of extra visitors that come out, because I lead trips all the time on the water, and we always bring bags to pick up trash, and we do see a lot of guests that bring their own bags and do trash pickups as well as we're out there. We also do Stewardship Sundays. So that meets once or twice a month, and it's just a group of volunteers who go along our trails or some of our access roads and use some trash grabbers and just pick up trash. And that's been very well received. And we're looking forward to continuing those. In the winter, we don't do as much. Participation isn't as heavy, but definitely spring and fall are some big seasons for us. My role here at the park, I oversee our education program. So last year, my team of educators, which I normally have 7 or 8 educators, we did almost like 500 individual programs for about 15,000 folks. So people come in here, they ask us questions. I say in here, I'm sitting in our visitor center. They ask for trail recommendations. They'll come for field trips, all sorts of different things. And our educators are leading hikes. We do a lot. And not just here at Pocahontas, but across the state, our parks are heavily involved in the MeWe program. So it's the Meaningful Watershed Educational Experience that we provide for 4th graders. But we work with a variety of ages from kid to adult, and we focus on stewardship, cleaning up the park, and really just trying to get the educational piece out there. So as I mentioned, we're a big place. The state park system itself is 43 parks covering just under 8,000 acres. So all of us are out there doing little to help out a lot, hopefully. And we are pretty lucky. I reached out to our volunteer coordinator and I just wanted some numbers. And he's like, for the most part, we don't have a lot of trash here, but I know that's not the case everywhere. I had previously worked at Falls Cape State Park, so right at the end of Virginia Beach there. And I also worked at First Landing, so a pretty busy place. And, things were clean there, but everything washes down. So hopefully with us with state parks on our efforts, both kind of as with the agency as a whole, and then also for like our education teams. Again, we're all trying to do a little bit to help everything that we can to do. So that's what I have. I don't know if you all have any questions about the parks in general or anything else about Pocahontas or anything like that.
That was awesome, Rebecca. We are so thankful you were able to join us. Joe and Emily are adding any questions that folks have in real time. So if you all have questions for Rebecca, now is a great time to ask those. And Rebecca, I sincerely wish we were there in person because it is an amazing park. It's one of my favorites. So it was really great to learn a little bit more about Pocahontas. And you all, if you have questions too, we're asking you to put them in the chat, but you can also raise your hand right now if you want to ask any questions of Rebecca or Christina or Zach. We're going to move on in the agenda in just a minute or two to hear from Will Eisenberg with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program. But now's the time to either raise your hand or put a question in the chat so that we can address those questions in real time. And Rebecca, you'll be able to stick around, right, at 12:05 when there's more input from the stormwater community?
Yes, absolutely.
We appreciate you. Any other questions from anyone? I'll just give it a few more seconds to make sure that we're not missing on anyone's questions right now. All right. Great. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Will Eisenberg. He manages various grants and provides coordination support for coastal partners with a focus on coastal resilience, marine debris, and ocean planning. Before joining the Virginia CZM, which is, again, the Coastal Zone Management Program in 2022, Will spent 9 years working in water quality programs at the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. He attended Virginia Commonwealth University, where he earned both his Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Studies in 2010 and his Master's of Science in Environmental Science in 2012. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Will, and it looks like everyone can see Will's slides. Just want to make sure Will's going to control those. And Will, if you can give me a thumbs up or just verbal yes, you're good to go.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you, Tara. And thank you, Rebecca, for that. I just wanted to share that my wife and I got married at Pocahontas State Park. So it's a place that's near and dear to me. And we tried very hard to have a waste-free event as well. So appreciate all your efforts there. As Tara said, my name is Will Eisenberg. I'm a coastal planner in the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program. And I have a presentation I'm going to give you that's titled Updating the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. It's a little bit of a misnomer because I'm going to spend a lot of the presentation talking more about kind of the background, where this plan came from, the context it arose from. And then I have one slide at the end that talks about our process for updating the plan. But I will get there. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of what I will be covering. Again, going to start a little bit with program and plan background just to give that context for where things come from. I always find it helpful to know why we're doing something, not just that we are. And then give a little bit of an overview of the plan, both in its purpose and its structure so that you're nice and acquainted with it. And then finally, that one slide on updating the plan and the process we have there. So for the program and plan background, figured it'd be helpful to first understand the program that I'm coming from and why we're playing such a leadership role in this process. So the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, while yes, my email address, my office, everything is at the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ actually serves as the lead agency, but it's really what we call a networked program. And so it's a network of 12 different state agencies and all the local governments in the coastal zone, which we have represented by the 8 coastal planning district commissions. So when you put those planning district commissions together and all the state agencies together, they make up what we call our coastal policy team. And the reason that those are all put together is because all of those entities have enforceable policies that protect, conserve, improve upon all sorts of different coastal resources in the coastal zone. And just for your awareness, the coastal zone, which is our jurisdiction, is any city, county, city or county that touches tidal waters. So a lot of the eastern half of the state. And so we get about $3 million in program funding annually. that we use to help implement a lot of the programs. So some of those enforceable policy programs are implemented with that funding. Some data collection that supports those is implemented through that. Our staff time is implemented through that. But we also have a segment of that funding that's used for what we call program enhancements. In other words, every 5 years, we look at what are the high priority needs in the coastal zone for protecting, conserving, and improving upon these coastal resources. And when we identify those, we then dedicate funding towards trying to make improvements on programs, policies, and other things related to those topic areas. And of course, it should probably come as no surprise that marine debris is one of those issues. And for the uninitiated, in the marine realm, we use marine debris to be kind of a catch-all term that includes a lot of things. I'll go over the 4 debris types we tend to talk about the most, but of course, the trash and litter that you all deal with so much in stormwater is a big part of that debris. And you might be asking yourself, why is marine debris kind of the focus of the coastal zone management program? Well, thinking about those coastal resources again and where it can have impacts, it has impacts on a lot of them. On aquatic life, obviously, we've already talked about that today, but also on tourism. Nobody wants to go to places that are covered in trash. Also navigation, when larger debris is out there in the navigational channels. And I'm sure I could continue the list on and on, but just so that you get the idea, that's kind of why we're playing this role in helping to lead this initiative. Now, the role of Clean Virginia Waterways, you've already heard some about their program. You're already probably well familiar with them from previous workshops. But from our perspective, they're our primary grantee for marine debris work. So again, I said we have funds dedicated to these program enhancements, and they really help us use those funds to make measurable gains in the marine debris realm. And so some of their work is to coordinate and help implement the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, and that includes some of the more administrative sides of keeping track of progress and identifying needs, but also some of the coordinative side of pulling partners together to figure out solutions to things. They also, of course, play a role implementing and leading various actions in the plan. And so this workshop is actually an outgrowth of one of those actions in the plan that you can see here up on the slide. The action 1.3.1.2 is to share effective trash interception practices, infrastructure improvements, and litter and marine debris education resources with stormwater managers. So this workshop is a really good way of helping to achieve that action. Now, in terms of the history of the plan, it kind of goes back to 2011. Before the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan was a thing, back in 2011, our coastal policy team identified marine debris as a high priority issue for us to target funding towards. With that funding available in 2013, we held our first Marine Debris Summit, which was just pulling together all sorts of partners and stakeholders to really talk about how do we comprehensively address this really multifaceted topic. And this summit was, of course, hosted by Clean Virginia Waterways and CZM. And then in 2014, with all the input from that summit, we published the first Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, which, by the way, was the first one on the East Coast. So kind of setting a precedent for work here on the East Coast. Following that, in 2021, when we were again identifying marine debris as one of these high priority areas, we were going about sketching out the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan for the next 5 years. That was also the time when the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan was set up for the Mid-Atlantic region. That effort was led by NOAA, but just like our plan, and I'll get into it in a minute, it's really more implemented by a consortium of stakeholders, partners, all sorts of different folks. But because we are also a part of that, and these issues are not state specific, some of them are when it comes to policy issues and things like that, but we all know that this debris is everywhere. So it takes not only a local, statewide, but also a regional and then global action to get towards that. So in 2021, we worked our plan to line up with the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan that was just released, both in the timeline and the structure of the plan. So it's kind of a big overhaul of our plan. If you see our silly numbering system of 1.2.3.1, you can blame the NOAA folks for that. But anyway, that's when we released the one that's currently out there right now, our second plan, which you see here shown on the far right. In 2026, it's our goal to have our third iteration of the plan ready to go. And like I said, I'll be talking about our plan for updating that here in a second. Now, in terms of the purpose of the plan, I want to do like a brief little thought exercise here just to kind of help you see where this plan is coming from. I think many of us have the experience where you look at lots of groups working on the same thing and you see a lot of reinvention of the wheel. Similarly, when you or other folks are working really independently on something, it's really hard to see what the greater needs are when all you know is what you're doing. And so our whole intention behind this plan is to really address those two things while making big progress on reducing and preventing marine debris. So in terms of our kind of formal statement, what this is really, it's a roadmap for working together on sustained approaches to understand, prevent, and mitigate marine debris. But really what it is an effort to compile work that's already ongoing, put it all together in one place, use that to identify gaps where we can make some progress, and then also help support partners who are working on similar actions. And guiding all the actions that we choose to put in the plan is the principles behind making sure that they're socially, economically, and politically feasible. And the reason there is that, you know, this is not something that you're going to solve overnight. I think we all are aware of that, but we want to make progress. So we want to make sure that we're taking steps in a direction that is feasible and will actually make some gains. All right, moving into the plan structure some. Here on this slide, you'll see kind of the table of contents from the plan. Really just what I use this to do is highlight what the goals of the plan are. So this starts at the highest structure of the plan is the goals. And you'll see they kind of sort by the different debris types that we're focused on. Consumer debris, which includes single-use plastics, derelict fishing gear and aquaculture related debris, microplastics and microfibers, and then abandoned and derelict vessels. And the way the goals work is they're set up as a statement, as a goal would be, is to understand, prevent, and mitigate the impacts from consumer debris or microplastics or abandoned and derelict vessels. So that's how each of the different sections of the plan are set up around the debris type with that goal of understanding, preventing, and mitigating the impacts. And then underneath that falls in each of those goals, these 5 strategies. These strategies are ways strategies that help achieve those goals of understand, prevent, and mitigate the impacts of the different debris types. And they're also kind of organizing structures for the different actions that we have in the plan. So again, the hierarchy is goals, strategies, and then actions, which I'll get to on the next slide. But you'll see some of the strategies that we have here: prevention, behavior change, education outreach, all the way down to policy management, legislation, and enforcement, with things like removal and research and monitoring in the middle. And so again, those are kind of the buckets or the approaches that we use to try and help realize that goal. And then underneath that is the actions. So here you can actually see the full structure. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you have the goal up here. In this case, it's for consumer debris: understand, prevent, and mitigate the impacts of consumer debris. Then under that, just from this screenshot, you have the first strategy, which is strategy 1.1. Prevention, behavior change, education, and outreach. And then underneath that, you have an action that's going to help you achieve that strategy that also helps you achieve the goal. So in this case, because it's around outreach, it's by the end of 2025, collaborate with Mid-Atlantic partners to create or adapt and disseminate at least 5 outreach products, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see that the action is here in this green box. But then very importantly, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. All of these actions are accomplished, are just really dependent on the work of a number of different partners. And you can see the leads and partners identified for just this single action. And as you go through the plan, there are many others listed for different actions. And it's worth noting that this is what the partners and leads were at the time that the plan was put together. However, now there's a lot more of these partners and leads working on these things, because as we go along, we try and continue that process that we use to set this up, see what work is going on, see what's already happening, and then work to identify the gaps. So in terms of leads and partners, again, this is just kind of a word blob of all the ones who are in the plan. So it's not comprehensive of all the folks who are actually working on things. But in terms of the roles between leads versus partners, primary role is just to implement the actions and report on progress to the leads. We try and make the reporting really simple. It's just twice a year to say, how are things going? You tell us. And then the leads, while they may implement some of the actions, their role is a little bit bigger in that they coordinate on the reporting of the progress, but more importantly, they coordinate among the partners to identify successes, challenges, and areas for improvement, essentially making it so that you kind of have this small community of practice around each action, if of course there are numerous partners working on it. All right, as promised by the title, moving into the last section of this presentation, updating the plan. So our plan there for updating the plan started back in March of this year when we held our Virginia Marine Debris Summit. At that, we really kicked off the process for updating this, just like we did the first time when we held our first Marine Debris Summit. We used it as an opportunity to really get a lot of feedback on how things are going, where we should go next. We looked at some of the strategies and said, what are the common challenges we're having at a strategy level? What are the opportunities that we see as things are evolving forward? Given the lay of the landscape nowadays, what are some things we should be focusing on more than we were focusing on back in 2021? And so we got a lot of input from that, continued a lot of those conversations with different partners and stakeholders as time marched on. And recently, getting into the bolder part of this list, we've been working on updating the actions. In fact, you all got a preview of some of those actions earlier today, some of our draft actions, but we've been taking all that input, putting it in there, seeing what needs to be continued into the next plan, what needs to be continued with modifications in the language of the action. Also, what are the new gaps that we're seeing now that we're further into this and we have all of our actions laid out in front of us? So we've been working on that. We're about to release it more broad scale as we then move into the input sessions throughout this fall. We have plans for a number of different ways for folks to provide input on those draft actions, but lucky for you all, you are the first to be able to give some input on some of these draft actions, which we selected the ones that seem to us to overlap with a lot of the stormwater work that you all do. Following a lot of the input that we'll get throughout the fall, we'll try and incorporate all of that in, come out with a final draft set of actions under the strategies and goals, and then we'll try and work to identify the leads and partners who will help implement those actions with the target completion date somewhere in early 2026, January, February, something like that. So with that, coming up next, of course, is going to be the input session. We're really looking forward for what you think can help you do your job better. If there's anything that you don't see in the list of actions, please identify it. Kind of the world's your oyster here, but we do try and again work on things that are politically, economically, and socially feasible. So we're really looking forward to your input there. I appreciate your attention on this. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Will. That was awesome, really informative. We are so thankful to have Will as part of our team. And I would love to go ahead and open it up to questions. You can raise your hand, you can put them in the chat, and these are questions directly for Will. We are going to have, an open forum here in a few to have a really nice open discussion with everybody. But if you have specific questions for Will, he is here to address them, and feel free to raise your hand or put those in the chat. And again, for those of you that are new to the call, we've had a few more folks join. While Will was speaking, please put your name and organization and email in the chat. We really appreciate you all being here for the 8th annual 2025 Stormwater and Plastic Pollution Prevention Workshop. So kudos to all our awesome speakers so far. There's been some nice discussion going on in the chat. So I really want to thank folks for doing that. Just what a beautiful park Pocahontas is, and someone really loves all the turtles there. So that's super cool. And so while we're going along, feel free to chime in the chat. One of the next things that we have on our agenda is Christina and Joe are going to take the lead on that. And they are going to talk about the input from the stormwater community. So they are going to go ahead and share their screen with the group. Joe, I think you're in the process of doing that, it looks like. And if you want to put that on slideshow mode, I think that would be great, Joe. So just click up at the top right and put it on slideshow mode. That way it's showing everyone the main slide. That would be really great. So we are a team and a force that are all working together here. So is that you, Christina, or Joe? Whoever it is, just put it on main slideshow mode, Joe. And we'll get that rocking and rolling. And if that doesn't, I'm just going to stop presenting and let Joe go ahead and present for the VM DRP input. And what I'm going to do is hand this over to Christina so she can go ahead and talk to everybody about what is next in the agenda. But I just want to one more time make sure there's no questions for Will before we do that. And you, all right, sounds good. Great. Christina, Joe, take it away.
Well, thank you, Tara. Tara, you've been doing such a wonderful job in keeping this group energized and excited about this workshop. Thank you so much. Will, great talk. Thank you for the background on the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. I was privileged to be in the first 2013 Virginia Marine Debris Summit and got to place all of the stickers on the socially, economically, and politically feasible boxes that we had hanging up. And it's definitely been a process, a very involved process over the years, and excited to be really more involved this year in the next update for the 2026 to 2030 Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. But again, this is for this state. This is for Virginia, for the Commonwealth, for all of us in this state that are working on marine debris. And it's something that we're very passionate about, and making sure that everyone that wants to be involved is involved. So this is your opportunity to comment, question, and give us any input that you might have on the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan as it relates to stormwater management and other aspects of stormwater in the plan. So basically what we're going to do is, you all, in the email that you received this morning, there's a link to a Google form, and that Google form also has all the actions listed, and there's a comment section, and there are 3 questions that we've created to help prompt that input that we want to receive from you. You can go to the next slide. So the Google form is going to be in a little bit of a different format. It's going to make it easier for you to take notes, make your comments. We want to hear from you. If you want to, if you're more of the kind of person that would rather just talk it out with us, let's do that. If you want to put it in the chat, do that. But we would really like to capture all of this one way or the other. So Joe is actually going to start us off with the actions related to microplastics. And we're just going to go through these actions, and one at a time. And the 3 questions that we're asking is, what work are you doing that we are missing in these actions? Do the actions seem feasible as they are written? And are there any gaps in these actions that need to be addressed? Joe, am I missing anything that you can think of, or Will, before we get this kicked off? I just really want to hear from everybody. I'm sorry, Tara?
Yeah, just let everyone know. I put that in the chat, so everyone's got access to that Google form Christina was referring to, so you can take a look at that. And it's also pinned in the chat, so that way, if you pin something, you can reference it real easily. So take it away.
Perfect.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Christina. That was a really good description of what we'll be doing for the next about 50 minutes. This is an open discussion part of this stormwater workshop to get your input. Based on these 3 questions in the top right, these really help us identify what we're missing in the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, and what we can add based off of what your needs are in the stormwater community. In our current plan, we have gone through and identified the actions from the current draft of the Marine Debris Reduction Plan that deal with stormwater in some way. And we've identified actions from 2 of the chapters based on microplastics and consumer debris. So we'll start with the microplastics. There are 5 actions identified about microplastics that can deal with stormwater in some way. So the first action is to complete, and again, these actions are designed to be completed in the next phase of the reduction plan from 2026 to 2030. So first one we have from this current draft is complete at least 1 research or monitoring project that characterizes the occurrence and or sources of microplastics in drinking water source waters. The stormwater relevance to a lot of these is just that there is stormwater runoff that can carry microplastics or other types of debris into our natural water bodies. Second action on the slide is to complete at least 1 research or monitoring project that implements the Chesapeake Bay Plastic Pollution Action Team's framework for monitoring plastic pollution in the Chesapeake Bay. And going into that framework it talks a lot about monitoring for microplastics in waterways. There are some more specific ways to monitor for them, such as at storm event sample or storm events and known pathways of microplastics. We'll pause here for a minute. Please feel free to take yourself off mute and let us know if there's anything that we're missing based on these actions. If you think that they seem good, if we should increase research projects or focus more on monitoring, any gaps. So again, focused on these 3 questions. And there are many ways to let us know your input. Again, put it in the chat, add your questions in the Q&A or the chat, or the Google form. And I will give it a few seconds here. If there are no input right away, then I'll go on to the next 3 for microplastics.
I'd like to ask, are there anybody here in this workshop that are working on any of these research projects currently? Anyone doing any kind of monitoring for microplastics in stormwater?
Adriana asked, is there a separate focus on all surface waters versus drinking water sources? I think that's a really good point. Because the first action we see here specifically deals with drinking water sources.
I can add to that a little bit.
Thanks, Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say that essentially the first and second action that we're talking about here, we thought did a good job, open to input on it, on looking at drinking water sources first, but then also just looking at general source waters or general surface waters for any of their impacts on ecosystems and other coastal resources. So if you don't think that's comprehensive enough, certainly open to input on that.
Let me go on to the other 3 microplastics actions. We couldn't list them all in one slide because they need to be easy to read for you all. So we can go over the microplastics actions that deal with stormwater and continue the discussion. So the next 3 we have are to work with Mid-Atlantic partners to conduct at least one study alongside organizations such as stormwater management agencies, to collect observational data and analyze the cost benefit and or barriers for mitigation technologies to reduce microfibers and microplastics entering waterways. Again, the connection here that we pulled out is stormwater runoff and carry microplastics from land into waterways. There may be, someone's ringing the call. Welcome. Second one is to monitor the occurrence of microplastic pellets in waterways and along common transportation corridors and prepare a summary of the monitoring results. And lastly, engage in meaningful interactions with at least 5 local and state decision makers to better understand possible policy and management considerations for microplastics and microfibers in waterways. Very wordy, but take a second to sit with these and let me know if you want to go back to the previous slide, but let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, and I might just add here while folks are thinking about what their thoughts may be, that when we're talking about microplastics here, it is not only just the ones you can't see, but also some that are just small enough you can see them on, say, your finger or something like that, but they're still visible. And I wonder from your all's perspective, as stormwater managers, what level of importance do you put on that type of debris versus something that's a little bit larger? And is there a way for us to kind of incorporate that perspective here?
It is totally valid to say that microplastics are not a point of concern or priority, and that's still very valuable input.
Absolutely.
It'll help us frame the next reduction plan in a way to help you prioritize it or prioritize what you want to prioritize.
Will and Joe, like as just a resident of Virginia Beach and someone that occasionally takes the bike ride down at the ocean front, we've kind of talked a little bit about this before. Construction debris from styrofoam siding, I guess, when it's not contained, is, I don't know if we've actually determined if there is any kind of law that, or any, what's the word I'm looking for? An organization that is keeping an eye on those things, because we've had a few incidences where they're building hotels or other large structures down here at the oceanfront, and that those tiny little bits of styrofoam are not contained. And I've seen, I have this picture of a storm drain just completely surrounded by these teeny tiny little foam pellets, and I've seen them on the low tide line, and I've actually seen them out in the ocean while paddleboarding. So, is that a general concern? I would imagine so. Is there something, any kind of policy that controls that? Just kind of throwing that out there. Is that something that we need to dig deeper on and look into further?
Christina, we'll go to Zach first. Feel free to unmute yourself, Zach.
For the stormwater folk, is there just so much other plastic debris that is out there that you all are working on that it makes it hard to focus on microplastics, and so many of them we can't see with our direct eye?
Thanks. Adriana, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Go ahead, Adriana.
Let's have a question in the chat that she's having trouble unmuting. Jeff, is there a separate focus on all surface water versus drinking water sources?
Yeah, we'll get to that one. Adriana, feel free to type it in the chat if you're having troubles with the microphone. We'll get to it. It's okay. Yeah, you're not muted, but we can't hear you. If you have access to the chat, you can put it in there. Not too much of a burden.
Is that any better?
There you
Yes, we can hear you now.
I figured it out. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Audrey Guzman. I work for the City of Virginia Beach in the Stormwater Management Regulatory Group in Public Works. And I am specifically the illicit discharge and improper disposal manager. So from the perspective of a lot of those, covering floatables, and we haven't specifically been looking at microplastics, I would say. What we tend to focus on is like the larger pieces. But like Christina was mentioning, that the microplastics from the styrofoam for building facades and stuff like that come across our radar a little bit more frequently in the last year, I would say. And from our perspective, that would fall under construction waste. So under the VSMP stormwater management discharge, that would fall under that. So a lot of our construction inspectors have been called out for those specific cases. But in terms of projects and studies, we're doing a pilot project in Town Center at the moment. It's not focused on microplastics though. So we've installed inlet grates on 21 of our stormwater inlets that are aimed to capture larger floatables. And we've specifically targeted Town Center because there is a street sweeper that goes by every day, and there's a crew that picks up trash throughout the day. So anything that's being caught in the storm and gutter, or in the curb and gutter, is going to be picked up and not carried down to a different storm inlet. But in terms of microplastics, that's not something we've focused on.
Good to know. Thank you. There's also a request to Audrey to put your email and job title in the chat if you're willing to do that.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
that's thanks. Really good to know that in terms of the foam pieces, you're addressing them, but it's not labeled as a microplastics initiative. It's construction debris. So that's really good to know. Thank you. Joe Hunt in the chat says, check how many Indian tribes is concerned with microplastics in general, and the chemicals from tires. That's the 6 ppdq. If I'm wrong there, particularly on the impact on aquatic resources, definitely.
Yeah, no,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to speak up about that. That one of the things that we're working on, Joe, is one of the draft actions is something that would look into those types of the terminology trying to be used now is plastic associated compounds, but those types of additives or catalysts in the case of the tire wear particles. So yeah, that is something we are proposing to work on, and happy to talk more with you about that.
Excellent input. Thank you, Joseph. And thank you, Will. Thanks, Audrey. Just going back to the first 2 actions, you can take a look at those as well. And you can see we are involving partners directly in the action plan through the use of using the framework for monitoring plastic pollution in the Chesapeake Bay. So if you have any outputs, initiatives, campaigns, white papers, anything from your organization relating to microplastics and stormwater, let us know as well. It's good to know about. There may be room to add it into the reduction plan in some capacity.
And I'll just add one more thing here. Christina brought up the construction debris that can be microplastics. We've heard from partners up in New Jersey who are leading the campaign town by town, which is admittedly a home rule state, and we are a Dillon rule state, but going town by town to help develop ordinances for containment around those things. While I don't know an exact path forward for something like that in Virginia, we're happy to explore what might be helpful for you in that realm and help you kind of achieve your program goals. So just throwing that out there as well, that you know, since you may be dealing with that, like we're just talking about even beyond styrofoam, cutting plastic decking or cutting PVC pipes, like, you know, it makes microplastics that often can find their way to the storm drain. So anyway, just kind of throwing it out there that we're here to try and talk through these things with you too, because the goal again is to try and make progress here and help, in this case, you all do your jobs.
Some other topics to consider that I'm sure you all as the experts as stormwater managers know about already are even gray water and water discharges that contain microfibers from laundry or combined sewer overflows that might have microplastics in them that would end up in the waterways on their way to a water filtration site. Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of on a similar note, we've been talking about the pre-production plastic pellets. And I'm wondering if any stormwater folks have had any issue with that. I think that's further up and inland from where I am, where those factories are. But I would imagine that has also got to be a concern in the more inland waterways. Just curious if anyone's dealt with anything like that, because I believe there's been a few spills recently, accidental.
Hopewell, around Richmond, Harrisonburg, Winchester.
Well, Joe, I think everyone is furiously typing into their Google Forms, so we'll find out later about microplastics.
The Google form will be available after this, so we ask that you complete it by next Friday, I believe. So plenty of time to get your thoughts in order. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Christina, now. So we have the other set of actions we pulled out from our current draft of the Virginia Marine Reduction Plan for 2026 to 2030. Based on that revolve around stormwater in some capacity. So the next set of actions comes from consumer debris, and this, I'm going to go forward one more to confirm. Yes, this is one slide with all the actions from consumer debris. So easier to read, one slide. Go ahead, Christina.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so consumer debris, just in case that's an unfamiliar term, those would be our single-use plastics, things like plastic cups and to-go containers, food wrappers, plastic straws and utensils, things like that, that might be finding their way onto the street. I mean, cigarette butts. You know, these are the consumer debris items of greatest concern. In my talk earlier today, I showed you that top 10 list from the Ocean Conservancy, from the International Coastal Cleanup. So it's a lot of food related items. Bottle caps, someone mentioned bottle caps in the chat earlier, plastic bottles, things like that. So these actions are related to that type of debris. And I can go through and read one at a time. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please feel free to raise your hand, throw it in the chat, or continue to furiously type into the Google form, and we'll check it out later. Each year, collect data through shoreline and stormwater surveys and marine debris monitoring at study sites to better inform decision makers and raise public awareness. Encourage citizen science where appropriate. So is anyone out there doing stormwater surveys to evaluate plastic waste entering waterways and infrastructure capability to trap or capture plastic pollution? Has anyone been there, done that, or planning to do that? Is this a feasible action? Is this something that we need to look closer at? Y'all are so quiet. Zach.
Adriana just mentioned their float monitoring program in Virginia Beach. I'd love to learn more about that and see if any other localities have floatable monitoring programs. Years ago, when I worked for Clean Fairfax, I led the Fairfax County Stormwater floatable monitoring program with the Fairfax County Stormwater Department. And that pulls in a lot of really good information.
Hey, Zach, sorry to interrupt you. You might want to take it off video because you're getting a little garbly. Just FYI. Thank you.
Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. So if other localities are doing floatable monitoring programs, that is really useful information, we'd love to learn more about that.
Karen, I see your hand up next. Karen Brown. Karen, you're on mute. I'm not sure if you're trying to talk at the moment.
And after Karen, we have Adriana and Courtney, Christina.
Yeah. Karen, we'll get back to you if your microphone's not working. If you want to go ahead and put your question in the chat. Adriana, go for it.
Sure. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about Virginia Beach's floatables monitoring program, or our floatables reduction program at the moment. So with our MS4 permit being renewed at the beginning of this year, our permit requirements have actually decreased in terms of floatables reduction monitoring, which is interesting and not something we expected, but something I think that has been similar for other MS4 programs. Our floatables reduction program itself is continuing as we've always done it. Our permit requirements aren't changing that, but our survey efforts currently are focused on the town center pilot program or pilot project. We have done some monitoring in the past that we have our results from, but we haven't really done anything with it, so we're not quite sure how it could be helpful.
Karen, were you able to figure out your mute, or should we go on to Courtney? Yeah, Courtney, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Courtney Harris. I'm at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, and I don't know of efforts to monitor these types of things in Virginia waters, but a project that I'm working on that involves the Outer Banks of North Carolina. There are researchers from Duke and NC State who go out during sunny day flooding events, during storm flooding events, and take samples of the water that's flooding the streets, and then they characterize what's in that water. So it's feasible. Doesn't sound like fun, but you know, it's important data, and they've been working to let the communities know that when they have these flooding events, what is coming up through the sewer systems and and the stormwater systems.
Yeah, that's monitoring. I did a 4+ year project of marine debris monitoring, and it's got to be consistent. It's got to be, you got to follow the protocols to the T, and that's the kind of data that needs to be collected in a way that it can be trusted, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But thank you, Courtney. Does anyone else? Oh, Zach, go ahead.
I have a follow-up question for Adriana. Is the historic monitoring data available for the public to see, and will the pilot project data be available for people to see? Thanks for answering all of my questions. I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Adriana.
Okay. I will have to check if our previous data is already available. Otherwise, I believe I'm happy to share it. I can check with my supervisor. The pilot project, I do believe we're going to make available.
All right. Any more questions on this action, or should we? Oh, Karen, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I missed your question. And is there any way you could briefly say that question again? Because I felt like it was relevant. I had to go in the next room really quickly.
Are you talking?
I'm talking Christina. Christina, I heard Christina ask a question like 4 comments ago. Sorry. If I missed it, that's fine. We can move on.
Yeah, Karen, I think I was just asking you if you were able to get yourself off of mute because you had your hand up.
Oh, it was something about stormwater. I thought I heard. You said, does anybody else have something? But maybe that was it. You were just sorry.
So Karen,
Karen,
do you know which section that was on? I mean, if you can give us an idea of what slide we were looking at, we might be able to address that. But the whole workshop's about stormwater. So anything we can do to help you, let us know.
Yeah, it was consumer debris, which I'm kind of focused on, but that's fine. We'll move on. All good. Thank you.
And Karen, just to reiterate, the consumer debris questions were like, what work are you doing that we are missing in these actions? Do the actions seem feasible as written? And are there any gaps in these actions that need to be addressed? Maybe those were them. And if you think of your question, let us know.
Yeah. We're going to be an exhibitor at the Virginia Association of Science Teachers. And this was something Katie Register recommended to us. And we're very excited because we have to get this to the, pre-K through 12 in the SOL. So it's a part of the curriculum to teach young people what is happening. So climate change is already in the SOL curriculum. So we're going to make a huge push to get this whole plastic pollution, stormwater. Kids have no idea that the little straw in the parking lot could very well end up in a turtle's nose in the Pacific Ocean, and they need to be aware of this. So I guess on the tail end of that comment, I would say if anybody has anything to add, we're going to put together a lesson plan to give to teachers. Please send me your ideas. And my email is in the chat, kbrownfred@gmail.com. Thank you.
Zach, go ahead.
Karen, those are great comments. We actually have other actions that are teacher specific. We will definitely be reaching out to you to discuss those further.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. The stormwater connection, I think, is a huge topic of conversation that isn't happening, especially in schools. I know I've taught it before when I've done talks in elementary schools, and I'm excited for you, Karen. I'm excited to see what you all end up coming up with, and certainly something that could be contributed to the plan.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all you do. I appreciate it.
You too.
Another piece of context on that for Christina. For the 2022 plastic public perception survey that we completed with UVM, the second And third highest concern, the registered voters in Virginia were plastic floating in the ocean and chemical in food. And then all the way down at the bottom of the list was trash and litter in your community. And so we have that the survey evidence that there's that disconnect between storm drain and the ultimate end of plastic. So the feelings that people have on this call are backed up by survey work.
And just to kind of build on that a tiny little bit more, I know stormwater programs can run educational programs as a part of dealing with the debris themselves. So if there are certain things you're doing in that realm that you'd like to work collaboratively on or share resources on or what have you, that's definitely an area that can fit very well into this plan as well.
We could almost consider that a gap, Will, in the education about stormwater. And maybe that's something that needs to be specifically addressed in the next update. So I think that's a good one. Let's see, Rebecca, I see that you mentioned, I think it was me that asked that question, parks, state parks, who is actually working to prevent floodwater or stormwater runoff in the natural waterways. And you are saying design and construct folks address that in the planning process.
Sorry. Yes,
we
have a design and construction team within our agency. We're all managed, state parks are managed under the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So when we're building new facilities, they come in and handle the design and construction of those facilities. And of course, they work with DEQ for all the permitting and fencing and things like that. So it's not my park manager specifically designing these things, but it is a team of dedicated design and construction specialists who take all those things into account.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go on to the next action. Identify opportunities to inform new or enhanced regional or local litter prevention plans, including new or retrofitted stormwater systems to intercept plastic debris. What is the stormwater system capability to trap or capture plastic pollution? I know some of you've got to have some comments on that one. Let's hear about all those fancy devices y'all are using these days. Adriana.
Yeah, our group. So our stormwater regulatory group at the City of Virginia Beach, we encompass our MS4 compliance, which is the group that I'm directly in. But then we also have a water quality group within our group, and we've been working on a lot of stormwater management facilities, specifically retrofits to meet nutrient TMDLs, and kind of as an added benefit, those also work to reduce trash and plastic pollution. So we've our most recent projects that we've been able to complete are hydrodynamic separators. We've had 2 of those installed within the last couple of years. And we've had a jellyfish filter that is almost done with construction, but those are really targeting our nutrient TMDL, so phosphorus and nitrogen, but those do also reduce trash as well.
Thank you, Adriana.
That's wonderful to know. And I'm sure, was this something that you knew before you put it in, or was it one of those things where after you put it in, it was evident it was also addressing trash? Just thinking about folks who may want to be trying to find co-benefits of practices.
But all of the decision making was really towards the nutrients, but all of our stormwater management facilities do capture trash. They slow water, they have the outlet control structure. That's just kind of the commingled benefit of stormwater management facilities.
Gotcha.
Anyone else want to brag about their systems?
We have another question in the chat from Brianna. And Brianna, do you want to raise your hand and ask that? I think it's directed towards Rebecca as well, or would you like me to do it?
Well, you can go ahead, or I could. Well, okay. So I had a conversation a little while ago. I'm with Regional Commission. So we deal with multiple localities. And I had mentioned possibly using grant money to add cigarette butt containers at just local parks. But I was told that they weren't wanted because of the need to empty them, but mostly because they're worried about people using them to hide illegal substances and as a drop-off or pickup spot for it. Is that an issue that's been occurring other places? I'm just not sure. That's the first time I heard of that.
Yeah, Rebecca, do you have an answer for that?
I don't. We I'm hoping you mean like county parks and not state parks, but each park is different managers and different schools of thoughts maybe. I know here it's not a problem. We have a cigarette butt disposal container affixed to the front of our building through Keep Virginia Beautiful. We offer them at our concerts as well. I mean, I've never heard any of our law enforcement rangers expressing concern, but maybe in some of the maybe Northern Virginia parks where you're like right in a city or bigger area like that, perhaps. But I've not come across it. No. I mean, and at one point in time, we did offer little they're little metal containers that had a little slide that you could put your cigarette butts in if you're like out on the trail, you know, and then put it in your pocket. They were metal and plastic and stuff. But that was when I first started, so that was years ago. But yeah, I've not heard that thought.
Zach, did you have comment there? Question?
Yeah. So using it as a drop spot for illegal substances sounds like fear mongering to avoid having to do work. It is an issue that there has to be someone to empty cigarette butt containers at park. It's my position that if smoking is going to be allowed somewhere, there needs to be ashtrays, and the venue should have it in their financial plan so they can pay someone to clean that up. The cost of cigarette butts is astronomical. We saw in the chat, it was shared that one smoked cigarette butt will kill, I think it was 4 fish. I don't remember the exact stat, but the cost of cigarette butt, there's a recent lawsuit in Baltimore, and the city of Baltimore has a suit against Altria and a few of the other major tobacco companies. They say it cost them over $5 million to clear storm drains of cigarette butts. And so the cost that comes with it, it's another case of deferring the cost onto taxpayers.
Yeah, I did a cigarette litter prevention program with a grant from Keep America Beautiful about 10 years ago at the Virginia Beach oceanfront, and I never found any illegal substances. And I was the one that emptied those containers. And yeah, it's not fun. I will be the first person to tell you that. We had the first year we had 10 receptacles on the boardwalk and several receptacles around different hotels. Never heard any kind of issues with that. We also gave the hotels pocket ashtrays. Rebecca was just mentioning those that they could hand out to their customers to take to the beach with them, so that hopefully they would use those instead of using the sand, because their equipment that they use to clean the beaches is the screens, I think, are too big to pick up a lot of that really small trash, including cigarette butts. So it was a great project and a great program, and I wish it had continued. But yeah, no drugs, nothing like that. Occasional something that shouldn't have been shoved in there was, but nothing harmful. Yeah, if anyone else has a comment or question about that particular action, we'll give it a second here and then move on. I think this goes, we've got about 10, 12 more minutes for this section, and then we're going to have a short break and then come back for some of our speakers. All right, I'm not seeing any hands. So the next action is share effective trash interception practices, infrastructure improvements, trash traps, and litter and marine debris education resources with stormwater managers in MS4 and non-MS4 permitted localities to assist them as they address floatables and litter. What is your infrastructure looking like these days? Are there any best practices, I don't know, SOPs out there for building new infrastructure? Zach?
So one of the things I noticed a lot is dumpster location. And they're very often at the bottom of the hill of a development, often right next to a storm drain. Has there been any research finding localities or any attempt to change the codes around the siting of dumpsters? There was a bill a few years ago in the General Assembly to require corral fencing around dumpsters. So any thoughts like that, any of you folks have would be fantastic.
Come on, y'all. You know you got questions about this. Chime in if you do. Feel free to raise your hand. Or just sort of weigh in about, do these actions seem feasible? Is there anything that we should address in there?
About a question for the group about the this last action here about engaging local and regional national businesses that feature large parking lots. That could also be property management groups. And I know that localities work with these property management groups to make sure their parking lots are all up to code. So any information on how you work through that process or opportunities you see to expand on that?
We do, looks like there was a new question posted, but I don't see it. If you do have a question, raise your hand. I just got a notification that there was. Zach and Christina and Will, I'm curious actually, let me put my video on. When we're talking about these like local and regional businesses that have large parking lots, I mean, what comes to mind for me immediately is like fast food restaurant parking lots. There's always trash dumped all over the parking lots. And so I'm wondering like what is being done currently to like work with those fast food restaurants, or if you all have any additional information about that. Like that is something that just like burns me up all the time. And I watch people do it, and I've at times even gone up to them and been like, did you drop something? I mean, it's such a horrible situation there. So yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
So that kind of goes back to the consumer goods industry point that I made earlier. A lot of these businesses, once the product is out of their hands, they see it as not their problem. And so part of the effort is creating that overall societal shift that these companies should start taking account for their product. And we have the recent EPS ban, and that's been helpful. We're still finding cups from restaurants that are using expanded polystyrene. Now we find the entire cup instead of just a piece of it. And so banning EPS or not using EPS, the bare minimum a business can do to reduce their impact. And there's some of it has to do with trash can placement. The less distance a person has to walk, the more chance, the better the chance is that something will be thrown away. But it's definitely a big question about the large parking lot.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and on my way to the office this morning, there was a guy in the Food Lion parking lot blowing leaves and all of the trash from that parking lot into the street. That's got to be illegal. It was like the landscaping company, and I see it all the time. Because once it's in the street, we know where it's going next. Next rainstorm. It's supposed to rain this afternoon, so it's going down the drain. Is there any laws against that? Any policies that would we can share with our landscaping community, or educational materials that we can share with them? Maybe they just don't realize that. I don't know. There was trash flying anywhere. They've got to see it. Clean City, you're up next. Clean City, you're still on mute if you're trying to talk. I don't see your name. I just see Clean City. All right. How about Adriana? And we'll get back to you, Clean City, if you are still interested in talking.
Sure. So from our perspective, that would fall under like improper disposal, and we can absolutely reach out to the businesses like the landscaping company or even the property management for the specific shopping center. Typically will involve code enforcement for those as well.
Adriana,
is a city ordinance. Yes, please let me know. I will reach out to them.
I'm gonna need your number.
Yes, absolutely. My email's in the chat.
Yep. Clean City.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute and it just didn't want to let me. And so it is illegal to blow grass clippings into the street. And unfortunately here, our police are the ones that have to enforce that. And so that has been a campaign that we have, one of the many campaigns we focus on social media and our e-news and newsletters. Blowing trash into the street also ends up being not just codes, but also police enforcement as well. At least in our city it is. But yeah, there is a ordinance, and I think it's statewide, on blowing grass clippings into the street.
I've always been curious about that. Thank you for letting us know. And it's not just blowing stuff in the street, but running it all over with a lawnmower and making it smaller and smaller so that it's just easily going to blow everywhere.
Yeah.
Karen?
Yes. So this is something that breaks my heart as well. I challenge any city in Virginia. I think Fredericksburg is the worst. I have different theories I won't get into now, but I had a local artist come up with like Food Lion. We have Giant Food actually, Walmart, Wegmans, little like what we call the broken turtle, which happens to be my little logo there, sitting in a shopping cart with the like Costco logo on it. And then we were going to use our own verbiage and just print out magnetic signs for them to put on the back of bathroom stalls or front of bathroom stalls, just to remind customers. And like we've been like toying with different logos, and just recently, don't litter, all, please, watch where you're going. All of a sudden I realized, I think the message should be, and this is me personally, pick up litter, it's going into this river. Pick up litter, it's going into the bay. Pick up litter, it's going in, just a direct message, because people have such short attention spans these days. And we just really have to get their attention. And then as far as consumer products, I consider myself an old lady now. And I remember, even though they are the criminals now, Pepsi used to, print on their cans, please don't litter, and it would be nice if McDonald's could put that on the bags that they hand out, or even on the top, the drink lids where they'd have Diet Coke or regular Coke, whatever, they would just say, please don't litter, it just, those kind of things, I think would be nothing for a large corporation to put on their wrapping or bags or what have you. But So what we're going to do here in Stafford is we're going to ask Stafford Parks and Rec, and they put their logo, and we just say, "Don't litter." It's all going in the Potomac or the Rappahannock, depending on which park it is. And just put them in the park bathroom stalls. And I was also thinking about reaching out to Virginia 250 because they're about to do the big Virginia 250 celebration. And in some of the state parks, like in Williamsburg, the same thing. So it's a magnetic sign so it doesn't offend anybody. You know, it's a tricky area to get messaging.
Go ahead, Joe. Thanks, Karen.
But can you all still hear me?
Mhm.
One of my headphones. So, one speaker now. Thank you everyone for your input. I just wanted to call attention to the time. It is time to go on break, but there are two more questions in the chat. One of them was about studies and impact of plastics on the sandy beach temperatures in Virginia and impacts on marine species that dwell or nest there. I thought that might be a good tie-in to, again, stormwater might be bringing plastic over the beaches and depositing it there and how that might affect temperature. And the other question was kind of addressed already. It was any construction policy guidelines that includes cleanup requirements during construction works. So if anyone has any answers to that or input, please feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute. And I do just want to give you your full 15-minute break. So feel free to stick around or take a little break, but thank you for your time.
Thanks, Joe. Oh, yeah, the sandy beach temperatures, I don't know that I've not heard of anything like that, like plastics on the beaches affecting the temperature. I'm assuming you're the sea turtle person that wants to know if it's affecting sea turtle nest temperature, because the temperature of the nest will actually affect the sex of the hatchlings. So yeah, I have not heard that plastics, but in a roundabout way, plastic production, because they're made with fossil fuels, is contributing towards climate change and the warming of our ocean temperatures and the warming of our atmosphere. Warmer nests produce more females. So we're getting fewer male sea turtles and more females. And Virginia is the northernmost nesting area for sea turtles on the East Coast. So I'm not sure if they're seeing nests any further north of here into Maryland or Delaware yet, but I predict that will happen sooner or later. And that imbalance in the sex of the sea turtles is probably going to cause some issues in the future as well. So in a way, plastics is affecting the temperatures, just not specifically by being on the beach, if that makes sense. Joe, what was the other question?
Was ordinances around construction policy guidelines and cleanup requirements during construction beach works?
So is there actually a policy written about the construction waste?
It's that we're not sure, but if anyone else knows, please let us know.
Yeah, throw it in the chat if it's available online somewhere. Yeah, we've got a 15-minute break. It's 1:03. We're going to keep this online. So if you want to chat amongst yourselves or go take a quick break, grab something to eat. It is lunchtime. We don't want anybody hangry on here. We will start the next session at 1:15 with our next speaker. And that's going to be Dr. Courtney Harris. And so, yeah, grab a break and we'll see you all in a few minutes.
I'm going to play a little bit of music for everyone while we are on our little break. So enjoy the music, and we look forward to talking to you all soon.
Okay, and am I going to be able to control the slides from this end?
So no, when we went through, we've got the whole presentation updated. So you're just going to want to let me know and just say next slide, like Christina and everyone was doing. And we just went through it with Dr. Wing, and he wasn't able to get them connected. So given our time constraints, if you want to connect offline, Courtney, Dr. Harris, we can do that.
Courtney.
Try it. Yeah, and we can try it on a different screen other than this. I just think it might just behoove us just to kind of roll with the flow, if that sounds okay with you.
That sounds like the way to go. That's the way to go. I may be a little awkward, but I'll, you know.
Yeah, and then that gives you the opportunity to, yeah, if I only wish we had just thought about it yesterday or something before we put everything together. But again,
it'll be fine.
yeah, I can join you offline if you want. Just let me know.
Let's stop.
All right, thanks so much. Enjoy your break.
Sure.
No man, no cry. No woman, no cry. Said I remember when we used to sit in the government yard in the French town. Over surf and deep fortress. And they would whistle with the feet. What friends we had, what friends we lost along the way. In this bright future, you can't forget your past. So dry your tears, I say. Go cry. Don't shed no tears. Said I remember when we used to sit in the government store in Trenchtown. And the torches would make a firelight as it was love would burning through the dirt. Then we would walk on the forest. All things I'll share with you. My fears is my only carriage. Oh, I've got to push on through. But while I'm on all right, so woman, I'm I remember when we used to sit in the government yard in Trenchtown, and then Georgie would make the fire light as it was like wood burning through the night. Then we would go on the forest. Oh, since I share with you, my feet, it's my only carriage. So I've got to push on through, but while I'm gone, no more must cry. Oh, my story, there's no sense of it.
All right, folks, I'm going to send out a quick little reminder to everybody that we are starting back up at 1:15. So we've just got another minute to go before we get to introduce our amazing professors to educate us on additional stormwater perspectives. So I'm going to shoot out that email reminder real quick, and then we'll get going in about 1 to 2 minutes.
We're gonna walk, all right, hopes of creation, see the generation, tell me why.
All right, we're going to get started in just about a minute or two. We'll give folks just a minute to trickle in, and then we'll get started. So feel free to get yourself situated. We just have a little less than 2 hours to talk to our amazing professors and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. So this is really exciting. We're glad you guys are all here. Just going to send out a quick reminder email, and we will get rocking and rolling here in just a few. All right, without further ado, I am going to thank everybody again. This has been really awesome. I love that folks are so engaged in the chat and that people are wanting to learn more about stormwater rock, and also like educate each other on what's going on in their neck of the woods. We've got a really nice representation of folks from all over the country. And again, when we first started the call, we asked everyone to go ahead and share their names and emails and organizations in the chat. So we want to make sure that you all are able to chat with each other too, before, during, and after this amazing workshop today. So again, we are Clean Virginia Waterways, and we are really excited to have everybody with us today for this 8th annual Stormwater Workshop. We've got some amazing doctors and professors from our universities in Virginia that are joining us today. And the first one that we have is Dr. Courtney Harris. Her research focuses on the development of methods for calculating the transport of materials in the coastal ocean, with a special emphasis on the transport of sediment. Recent projects include development of coupled numerical models. Sorry, let me put my video on too. I just realized you're just talking to a little ghost. Recent projects that Dr. Harris has worked on include development of coupled numerical models that can represent the impact of coastal storms, including runoff, storm surge, and wave impacts. She has been at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, which a lot of us call VIMS, since 2001, where she conducts research and teaches numerical modeling and transport to graduate students. So let's give it up for Courtney. We are so excited you're here, Dr. Harris, and I will hand it over to you.
All right. I will be saying next slide when it's time for the next slide. So my delivery may be a little rough because I'm not used to that, but go back a slide now. So I'm Courtney Harris, and as Tara said in her nice introduction, I'm a professor at VIMS, the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. And for those of you who aren't familiar with VIMS, we are located on the York River. We are part of the College of William and Mary, but our campus is on the York River, about 25 minutes away from Williamsburg, where William and Mary is. We have graduate and undergraduate programs here. We have a faculty and research scientists numbering of about 60. So there are about 60 of us doing research and advisory service in coastal and marine issues. And then our graduate population is usually about 100 graduate students. So we're a pretty large coastal research institution, and we have 3 parts to our mission. The first is education, which mainly we do through William and Mary with our graduate and undergraduate programs, but we also do advisory service to the Commonwealth as well as research. So on the next slide, I show, so next slide, please. What I'm going to talk to you about today is I'm going to use my time mostly to talk to you about work that my group has been doing to estimate the transport of contaminated sediments during a large coastal storm. So we had funding through NOAA, along with collaborators from Texas A&M and Louisiana State University, as part of what was called the NOAA Coastal and Ocean Modeling. It wasn't the toolkit, it was the test bed, the NOAA Coastal Ocean Modeling Test Bed Project. And as part of this project, we were working at putting hydrological models together with oceanographic models to look at how large coastal storms impact coastal areas. The case study that we looked at was Hurricane Harvey, which impacted the Houston and Galveston area, as well as other parts of the Texas coast. So I'm going to show you some of our research from this Hurricane Harvey study. And then at the end, I'm going to show you some work that some of my colleagues at VIMS are doing to apply similar methodology to our Virginia waters. So the three pictures here, one is the satellite image of Hurricane Harvey as it was making landfall in Texas. And then to the left of that, that figure shows the storm track. Those lines are the storm tracks of the eye of the hurricane. And then the color over the map is the amount of precipitation. So you see that even though the Galveston Bay area wasn't hit directly by the eye of the storm, it was still kind of the locus of most of the precipitation. So the fact that there was such high levels of precipitation coupled with a storm surge carrying water into Galveston Bay meant there was a lot of flooding from Hurricane Harvey. The picture on the bottom right points out that while a lot of times in the popular media we see flooding of residential areas, this storm also really flooded a heavily industrialized area. The Houston shipping channel is one of the most industrialized areas of the US. And so the project we were working on was looking at how the flooding of this area that is a Superfund site, how the contamination that would have been eroded from this Superfund site would have transported downstream and maybe impacted more dispersal of these contaminants. So next slide. Hurricane Harvey serves kind of as a poster child for a compound flooding event. So in our area of research, we call something a compound flood if it's a type of storm event that impacts a coastal area, both by storm surge, wherein the ocean water levels rise, flooding our coastal areas. But during these storm events, not only is the ocean adding to water levels, but also river floods and direct precipitation add to water levels. So predicting the effects of these compound floods is really a first order research problem for understanding how coastal communities respond to large events and what we think how those communities are going to be responding in the future. The next slide shows next slide shows the schematics of how we go about trying to predict compound flooding. So in the past, 10, 20 years ago, we had people developing hydrological models. So there are hydrologists who study water in rivers, study runoff. They were developing a suite of hydrological models. Meanwhile, those of us who are ocean modelers were developing hydrodynamic models. And these were really two different research communities. But in order to understand compound flooding, we need to have river models that interact and couple with hydrodynamic models. And so part of this project that we've been doing in Galveston Bay is to couple a river model that can account for all of that precipitation and runoff that impacted the Houston and Galveston area, along with the storm surge that came from the ocean side. So next slide shows kind of the motivation for looking at Hurricane Harvey in itself is the fact that this was an area that it's kind of become one of the poster childs for understanding compound flood events. So the picture on the left shows the storm track of Harvey, and then the color of the line indicates the intensity of the storm. So Harvey made landfall in the Corpus Christi area there where it's colored in purple and red, and then it kind of bounced off and then traveled eastward and then turned northward where it made a second landfall up in Louisiana. Because it kind of hugged the Texas coast for so many days, it dumped a lot of precipitation, equaling up to 60 inches of rain in the Houston area. But not only was Houston impacted by the flooding from the water, it was also impacted by storm surge. The satellite picture in the middle shows after this is taken on September 1st. So by this time, the rain had cleared, the storm had moved over Louisiana, but there was still a big sediment pulse carrying floodwaters and sediment-laden waters out into the Gulf. This flood pulse was created by a slow reservoir release. So during the peak of the rainfall and the flooding, there was really high riverine discharges that were carrying material down Galveston Bay, but after the storm had passed, the areas in Houston still needed to release water from their reservoirs, so that led to a prolonged kind of moderate discharge that is still, at the time of this satellite picture, carrying sediment and floodwaters out into the Gulf. Now, the picture on the upper right is showing the effects on contaminant transport from the storm. So this is data taken from a colleague from Texas A&M, and he had gone out and he's taken sediment cores in Galveston Bay many, many times, and he looked at the mercury content in those sediment cores. So this is a mercury that's on the seafloor. The color here indicates whether there was more or less mercury on the seafloor after the hurricane compared to before the hurricane. So the areas that are colored in red are areas where the mercury concentrations of the seafloor increased during the time period of the hurricane. The areas colored in green are the locations where the concentrations of mercury actually decreased. And so what he saw in this upper part of Galveston Bay is that the mercury concentrations were greatly increased in this upper part of Galveston Bay, and he attributed it to scouring of the seabed during the peak flood event. And then as these reservoir release flows continue to carry stuff outward and downstream, that those contaminated sediments continue to be carried down into the greater Galveston Bay. So next slide. What we've been doing with our numerical model is trying to test that idea. So the two maps on the bottom right are showing first a map of Galveston Bay, and then I've zoomed in to a map of our model grid. So we are running a three-dimensional ocean and coupled hydrological model for the upper Galveston Bay, and we're trying to use this model to calculate the water velocities, the water levels, the suspended sediment transport, and also the erosion and transport of those contaminated sediments that were heavily laden with mercury. We're running the model for the time period of the Hurricane Harvey event, and we're trying to look at it in terms of whether the storm surge period, the peak flood period, or the slow release of the reservoir period would be the conditions that led to the greatest transport of contaminants. So go back, please. The top panel shows the winds. The bottom panel shows the water level. So we see on August 25th, there was a storm surge period where a meter of water headed into the bay. This was caused by offshore conditions blowing water into the bay. The middle panel shows the river discharge. So it's on a logarithmic scale. So we see that before the event of the storm, the river discharges were about 100 cubic meters per second, maybe up to 500 cubic meters per second. But during the peak flooding period that's colored there in pink, the river discharges were higher than 10,000 cubic meters per second. During the time period of the slow reservoir release, the discharges were about 1,000 cubic meters per second. So there was a lot higher than the pre-storm of values, but lower than the peak discharge. So what we did with the model was to account for the hydrodynamic forcing and the sediment erosion and evaluate whether the mercury was mostly eroded during the storm surge time period, the peak flood, or the post-storm release. So next slide. A little bit more about how we set the model up. In order to account for the contaminated sediment transport, we had to initialize our model with how much mercury we thought was in the sediment bed. So this map on the upper left shows the concentration of mercury that we assumed was in the seabed at the start of the model. And we based this on sediment core data that we had from the EPA as well as from our colleagues at Texas A&M. So that little arrow pointing to Patrick Bayou, that's a location of a Superfund site where there's known to be legacy, very high levels of contamination of mercury in those sediments. The next slide shows an animation of our model results. So on the left side is showing we're seeing snapshots and animation of how much of the suspended mercury is in the water column. So now the flood is starting, the storm is, the precipitation's coming down the Houston Shipping Channel, and we're getting very high levels of sediment eroded and mercury, this suspended mercury put up in the water column. On the right hand is our net erosion and deposition of mercury-laden sediments to the seabed. So areas that are in blue are areas where the storm scoured out and removed mercury from the seabed, and the areas that are in red are the areas where we redeposited contaminated mercury. And then the next slide, I took 3 snapshots of the model results to try to evaluate whether the storm surge, the flood pulse, or the slow release of the reservoir led to most of the mercury redistribution. So the top row of figures is our suspended sediment concentrations at these 3 snapshots, and the bottom panels are the amount of suspended mercury that was in the water column for these 3 snapshots. So during the storm surge phase, even though a meter of water surged into this area and increased water levels, it didn't create flow conditions strong enough to really suspend much sediment. During the flood pulse stage, however, when the river discharges reached, 10,000 cubic meters per second, we were getting lots of sediment eroded from the bed, and that sediment along the Patrick Bayou areas were very heavily contaminated with mercury. So we had high concentrations of mercury in the water column. But then during the slow release phase, while the reservoir release was still going on, those flows were not really energetic enough to suspend much sediment, and they were coming from more diffuse areas. So we had some sediment suspended in the water column, but very little mercury. So then the next slide shows kind of the answers to our research question. We were asking which phase of the storm mobilized contaminants, and we saw that overall we had the storm was energetic enough to erode contaminated sediment and move that sediment kind of downstream in the system, but most of our sediment pulse and our contaminant pulse was coincided with the peak flooding pulse. So the panels on the bottom left show the net sediment erosion and deposition and the net mercury erosion and deposition from the seabed. So areas that are blue are areas that were scoured, and areas that are red are areas where we had net deposition of either sediment or the mercury. And then the time series that are shown on the right are showing the phases of those fluxes. And we pointed out the peak of the storm surge. There really wasn't much sediment transport going on at that time. But during the timing of the peak flood pulses, that's when we had our highest sediment and contaminant fluxes. All right, and then the next slide is just to kind of wrap it up. Our research question was to look at whether this hurricane and compound flood event would have impacted contaminant redistribution. And we saw that, yes, it did, and that most of this scouring and redistribution of the contaminated sediments, the model indicated it happened during the flood pulse, not the slower reservoir release. And I've shown you this example, for Hurricane Harvey hitting Texas, but these types of issues and processes are also really relevant for areas in coastal Virginia. The picture that I chose for the background of this slide is a picture of Norfolk during a flooding event that was taken by a colleague at VIMS, Derek Loftus. And so on the next slide shows some of Derek Loftus and his colleagues have been working on developing flood models for the Virginia areas. My model that I showed you, we've developed for Texas, but Derek Loftus, Harry Wang, Joseph Zhang, and others at VIMS are using similar techniques, with some differences, but to develop very high resolution stormwater models for coastal Virginia. So here, the left-hand panel is a snapshot of one of their model runs. I think this was Hurricane Matthew, where they're hindcasting flooding of, I think that's a Virginia Beach area, and it's showing that their resolution is getting not just to like the block level or the area, but actually to the building level. So just to summarize, I feel our coastal communities really need to take advantage of our ability to develop these models. And now that we can get this type of resolution shown here, combined with the ability to estimate transport during complex compound flooding events, that can be a capability that will be really important going forward for our coastal communities. Thanks.
That was awesome. Really amazing, Dr. Harris. This work that you all are doing at VIMS is so important. So we'd love to open it up to questions for Dr. Harris, and she does go by Courtney, so we don't need to be formal here, but either way, I've got some questions too, but I would love to open it up to all of the attendees first to find out what questions they have for you. Feel free to raise your hand so that we can have a discussion openly. And Courtney, I think you are available. Are you available with us later on in the afternoon when we close out? Yeah. So if you're thinking of questions, you're not sure what to ask yet, please put them in the chat. We can ask her later. But I'd like to open it up to everyone to ask a few questions. So I'm just going to mute myself and let you guys ask a couple questions. Feel free to raise your hand. Karen, go ahead.
I was wondering if this, you're going to make this PowerPoint available. It was really amazing.
I think that Tara said that the talks were recorded, but also, yeah, if there are any figures that you would like, I'm
Okay,
with
so
that.
the PowerPoint itself is not going to be published, right?
It's fine with me. I'd like to have the VIMS logo on it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The
I think,
Harvey model, where my graduate student, in the interest of time, I could have talked much longer about it, but my graduate student at VIMS named Zian Du, he's responsible for developing that model, and he is working on getting that published at this time. So
okay,
the publication is not out, but I'm happy to share slides.
And
Okay,
yeah,
thank
Karen, just to reiterate what Courtney said, this is being recorded. So this will be available for everyone, as well as the presentations with all the appropriate logos on it for sure. We definitely want to give credit to where it's due for these amazing scholars and all of their work. Very impressive. And
Perfect. Thank you.
yeah, definitely. Any other questions before I ask mine? So Courtney, I was wondering, I know Dr. Wang's presentation is going to include some localized work here. And I wondered how the work that you did in Galveston does relate to a lot of the issues that we have here in Hampton Roads. We all know I live in Virginia Beach, and Norfolk is second to New Orleans at risk for sea level rise because of the subsidence there too. So just wanted to know if you could elaborate a little bit of why you all chose Galveston. I'm assuming there was, a grant involved in that, and then how that relates to some of the issues that we have here in Hampton Roads.
Right.
Especially like the Mercury. I was really curious about the Mercury. That image and animation that you showed was really telling.
Yeah, and that's the model. But we chose this site in part because of the figure that I had on slide number 5 that shows the sediment core data. So if you go back several figures back, the sediment, the model, I love doing modeling. That's what I do for my career. But go back one more slide. The data in the upper right, this data was available before we did our proposal. And our colleague, Tim Della Penna, had been taking sediment samples in Galveston Bay for a long time. He's at Texas A&M Galveston. And he wrote papers that, showed that contaminated sediments that were thought to be legacy contaminants that were buried had been scoured out during Hurricane Harvey. So it made us think about the fact that these compound floods could remobilize contaminants that we, the communities, had thought had been dealt with through burial. So we wrote the proposal based on the motivation of the need to try to account for contaminated transport. And the other thing that was interesting about this site was, if you go to the next slide, on slide 6, I didn't have time to go into the detail, but on the river discharge panel, the black line is the river discharge that was measured at the USGS gauges. But the gauges tend to be very far upstream, 10s, 20s of kilometers, maybe even 100 kilometers upstream of where the bay or the coastline is. And so in order to account for all that precipitation that happened between where the USGS gauge is and the actual Galveston Bay and San Jacinto River estuary, our colleagues at LSU ran the Wharf Hydro model that takes the river gauge from the USGS, adds all the precipitation and runoff that happened between the gauge and the bay, and then that is what the red and the blue lines are, is the results from their Wharf Hydro model. And so the Wharf Hydro model shows 100 times higher discharge levels than if we just relied on the USGS gauge. So Galveston Bay is a good example for showing the importance of accounting for the precipitation between the gauge and the coastline. And it was a good test case for looking at whether we could model contaminated sediment transport.
Thank you so much. That's really informative. I love to sort of nerd out on things like that, being a geologist in my past life. So it's great to learn more about it and just stay in the know on presentations like this. So really thankful.
Tara, there's a question in the chat. Is there any remediation happening for this mercury being kicked up?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. The flood was, I think, the monitoring continues, and there are shellfish advisories around Galveston Bay about contamination in the, don't eat the fish that are caught here kind of things.
Yeah, that was a great question,
Yeah.
Brianna. Thanks for asking that. We do have some extra time here, but as I mentioned, Courtney's going to stick with us through the end of the workshop. So if there are more questions, feel free to ask those now. And otherwise, we're going to have just a brief little transition while I stop sharing my screen and Dr. Wang is going to set up his screen. And while we're doing that, please feel free to ask Dr. Harris any additional questions, and she will be here at the end to answer questions as well. Dr. Wang, if you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen, please.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, like I said, feel free to ask any other questions to Dr. Harris while Dr. Wang is getting set up. How long did you all work on that project, Dr. Harris?
A total of like 2 years, really 2 years, I think. And that was started, it started with developing the numerical model grids and coupling the ocean model to the hydrological model that's getting the runoff.
Great.
So I think there were probably like 3 or 4 grad students working on it nearly full time for 2 years.
Wow, good to know. Good to know. Any other questions for Courtney right now before we hand the torch over to our esteemed Dr. Wang? I'm going to go ahead and start with an introduction for Dr. Wang. He is a professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. Go Monarchs. I'm an alumni there, so near and dear to my heart. He has extensive teaching and research experience in hydrology, as well as hydraulics and water resources. Dr. Wang has authored and co-authored numerous peer-reviewed journal articles, conference papers, technical reports, books, and book chapters. He has received multiple honors and awards, including serving as a Fulbright Scholar at the University of Canberra, Australia. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Dr. Wang, for your amazing presentation. And it looks like the slideshow is working great, so we did it.
Okay, thank you.
Way to go. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So it's my pleasure to present effects of compound climate ocean events on coastal resilience, flooding, groundwater response, and stormwater BMP placement. So following, what happened to this slide? Okay, and move forward. So how to move forward?
So if we have any, if you can't get it to go, we'll just switch over so I can do the slides for you. Just let me know and we can switch over the presentation.
Okay. Okay. So I think this one. Okay. So I
You
just
gotta actually click.
go this way. Can you see my screen right now?
We can.
Okay. Okay. So so following the background information, I will overview the 4 projects we did in the past years. Probably you see I listed many people here, so we worked together on this project in the past years. After that, I will highlight our ongoing interdisciplinary research. So this is also a group of people we are working together. And finally, I will draw conclusions. So sea level rise will increase landward hydraulic gradient. So this sea level rise will increase this hydraulic gradient, facilitating saltwater intrusion, and this can increase this freshwater table, brackish water table, saltwater table, and this could create groundwater flooding in low-lying areas. So we already have some areas have this problem in the past years. Climate change will change surface hydraulic processes a lot. That's infiltration, evapotranspiration, and these changes will be transferred to this recharge, and this will affect our groundwater flow processes. In coastal areas, we have these 3 types of flooding. First, the tidal flooding, that's we also call this sunny flooding. Another one that's a flash flooding from a heavy storm, and also we have this compound flooding from a high tide plus this heavy storm. Urbanization could increase stormwater runoff volume and peak, and also can reduce this peak time to peak. Usually we use various kinds of BMPs, best management practices, or nature-based solutions to mitigate this impact from urbanization. But how to select appropriate BMPs for a given location, that's still a challenge for practical engineers. Also, what are the treatment efficiencies of these BMPs? So in this presentation, I will overview the projects we did to develop this BMP selection tool and also BMP treatment efficiency. So first, the project we did is raising Bainbridge Boulevard in the city of Chesapeake. Probably you can see this. We have this Bainbridge Boulevard, and this road is frequently flooded by this high tide water. And also the community behind this road also is frequently flooded by this compound events of this high tide and heavy storm. So the city of Chesapeake has the intention to raise this Bainbridge Boulevard and install some floodgate to prevent this tidal flooding. And in this project, we considered various kinds of these high tides. So that's from 4.2 to 13 feet. And also considered these different storm events. So we use this Atlas 14 to represent the situation without climate change. And then we use this rainstorm proposed by Hampton Road Planning District Commission. So that's roughly 20% higher than this Atlas 14 number to represent the climate change. So you can see we have various kinds of scenarios here. So that's a different combination of this high tide and rainfall. So we called that a compound events. So based on this simulation, if we have a high tide of 4.2 feet and a sunny day, we still have some flooding in this area. Probably you can see these red ones and yellow ones. So we have some flooding in this area. And if we have this high tide of 13 feet, that's considered the sea level rise impact. There you can see this flooding could be severe. That's in this area, and this area we will have lots of flooding in these areas. So based on this simulation, you see we simulated these various kinds of scenarios, and this worst compound event So that means we have 13 feet high tide plus 11.36 inch 24-hour rainfall. And if we raise this Bay Bridge to 5 feet, so that's roughly 0.6 feet above the existing road surface, plus this flap gate installed to the box covered under this Bay Bridge, then we can solve this flooding issue. Then we can prevent this overtopping of the road and also prevent flooding to the community surrounding this area. The second project, we evaluated impact of climate change and sea level rise on coastal shallow groundwater. So we use this Little Creek watershed that's in Norfolk, bordered with mid-Atlantic Ocean. This watershed is very flat, has a very low topographic variation. So we use this watershed to see how this climate change and sea level rise will affect this shallow groundwater. So we use this integrated surface water and groundwater model, SWOT, and model flow model. So you can see we participate this watershed into 65 subbasins so that we can consider these special variations. Also, we subdivide this aquifer into 10 meter by 10 meter grid across this watershed. So we use this integrated modeling system. Then we look at this how this recharge will change. So this recharge is for baseline condition. Baseline means we consider this as mean sea level 0 and historical rainfall events. So you can see this simulated recharge varies across this watershed and could be affected by this drainage network. And these are simulated water table. That's a shallow groundwater table. And you can see this in this area, the water table high, and this area is low because this mainly this river tributaries. And as expected, the groundwater level is positively related to this recharge. The larger the recharge, the higher water table. So that makes sense, right? Then we use this model to evaluate how this water table will change if we have this different climate condition. So we use this three regional climate model simulated rainfall. This include this four social economic development pathways, and also we considered this four sea level rise scenarios. That's rise by 0.5 foot, 0.6, 1.2, 2.2, and also we simulated these 12 compound events. So these are results from this climate change. You can see this water table will mainly increase in the areas away from these river networks and waterways. So the biggest increase will happen in fall and September. So this will have this highest impact from climate change. And these are for different scenarios. So this at an annual scale. So these are different climate scenarios. So these are effects from this sea level rise. You can see this the areas close to this coastline will have this biggest increase of shallow water table as a result of this sea level rise. So this will mainly affect these areas is close to this shoreline. So if we look at this impacts extent from this sea level rise, that's roughly 600 meter within this 600 meter to the shoreline. So you can see this sea level, this groundwater level will be impacted by this sea level rise within this 600 meter areas. So this for these compound events, so you can see this both these areas close to the coastal line and also the areas away from these drainage networks will have this water table increase due to this climate change and sea level rise. So these are for different scenarios. We simulated very kinds of scenarios. So if we plot these results like this way, so you can see this groundwater rise, so that decrease with distance away from the sunlight. So that makes sense until 600 meter or roughly 650 meter. Then this influence from this sea level rise will be minimal. And this impact from this climate change. So you can see this groundwater level rise will increase with the distance away from the river. So if you have a location away from the river, then this groundwater table will have a larger increase as a result of this climate change. So the third project is about this developing of BMP selection tools. So we considered this topographic gradient and also hydraulic soil group. So this considered soil properties, and also land use, land cover, and depth to water table. Then we developed this tool for people to select appropriate BMPs for a given location in Norfolk. So currently we just have developed this tool for Norfolk. So if you click any point within Norfolk, you will get a list of these appropriate BMPs that can be placed in this location. So we just consider these 4 factors. So if you are interested in this, you can look at this website. I think Tara will post this link into our chat box. Yeah, then you can search this website. You just
Yeah,
click this,
I'll go ahead and share that now,
Yeah.
Dr. Wing. And we just have a couple more minutes, so we need to, and then pass it over to Dr. Brush. Just a heads up.
Okay. So next project we did this BMP treatment efficiency assessment. So we instrumented one biodetection pond in Virginia Beach, and this biodetection pond received stormwater from a commercial area, lower density residential area, open space, and high density residential, transportation, and industrial. So we instrumented this pond so that we can monitor the inflow from these different areas. And then we evaluated this treatment efficiency of this pond.
And Dr. Wing, we have 1 more minute left, okay?
Okay. We did 1 year monitoring work. So this shows this different water quality parameters in these inflows. And you can see this TSS, total phosphorus, this TN, total nitrogen. So we did this measurement. And this removal efficiency for TSS, for this TN, for TP. So we did this evaluation. So currently we have this interdisciplinary research about this PFAS and 6-PPD origination, transformation, and transport in soil water systems. So we are doing field sampling, laboratory experiments, and physical modeling and AI-based modeling. So based on our project, we say compound flooding challenges coastal resilience. Coastal shallow aquifers are vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise. That could cause this groundwater flooding. Streams help buffer and mitigate the impact of these impacts. So that's important to preserve these nature stream channels. BMPs and nature-based solutions can be strategically implemented to enhance coastal adaptability. So that's important for us to identify most appropriate BMPs and nature-based solutions to mitigate these impacts. Our research is funded by ICAR, the Institute for Coastal Adaptation and Resilience, and the Commonwealth Center for Recurrent Flooding Resilience, and the City of Virginia Beach. Also, I want to say many thanks to Professor Carol Cassidy. She gave us a lot of support. Thank you for your attention. Any questions?
So thank you so much, Dr. Wang. And in the essence of time, we are going to move to the next presentation. And if you have questions for Dr. Wang, put them in the chat, because our next presenters do actually need to stop at 2:30. So we want to make sure we give time for their presentation. So if you have any questions, Dr. Wang, that was amazing. I've looked over the presentation a couple of times since you shared it with me, and there's so much great information about the place I was born in Norfolk. So any questions you all have, please put them in the chat. We will address them afterwards. And so we're gonna hand the torch over to two of our other speakers right now. And I'm gonna introduce Dr. Brush as well as Dr. Molly Mitchell, and they both work at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. And in the essence of time, I'm going to make sure that I'll let you all introduce yourselves about the research that you're doing during the presentation. So Molly Mitchell's new to the presentation today, so we're happy to welcome her onto the team today, and I'll let you all take it away.
Super, thanks Tara, and thanks for having us. Thanks everybody for your interest and staying with us here. So we're going to talk about a tool that we've been developing with a former student, Emma Dodsworth, and since we developed this collaboratively and thought it would be worth tag teaming this presentation. So I'm going to do the first part and I'll hand it off to Molly to wrap it up. So we're going to tell you about a tool that we've developed called LSNIPS. I'll define that on the next slide. But it's an online tool. It's a computer model with a user interface on it for estimating NPS, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment removals by living shorelines. And so, we've been talking a lot today about large debris and plastics, and Courtney mentioned sediments. And so we're going to pick back up on the sediments and go into another pollutant that can come in stormwater, the nutrients. And while we've been thinking about this in a slightly different way, there's application here to thinking about stormwater loading. So bear with us and hopefully we'll make the connection. So just to get into it, LSNIP stands for the Living Shoreline Nitrogen, Phosphorus, and Sediment Calculator. Again, it's this online model with this interface. You see the landing page screenshot of it there, and this QR code if you want to play around with it. It's a demo sort of beta version right now that's available. That QR code will come back by the end of the talk, so no need to get it right now. In any case, this online tool for computing nutrient and sediment removals by living shorelines, which allows end users to quantify site-specific removals in a given location for a given living shoreline installation, to explore alternative designs and alternative locations for maximizing these removals. It's a tool for assessing the number of living shorelines and the area of them that you would need to install to reach the TMDL here in Bay Waters. And while we haven't started on this track yet, it is absolutely applicable to computing removals from stormwater inputs. And so again, we're sort of looking forward to moving into that phase next. So next slide, let me just kind of wanted to define the tool at first. Now I'll step back and give you a little background. Living shorelines, a good example here in the photo, are a common form of shoreline restoration. We're talking about tidal waters here, so in the Chesapeake Bay and really all around the country. They're a common form of coastal restoration practice, which establishes these created marshes. You see this rock sill that's put in, and then a sort of unvegetated intertidal, subtidal sediment is filled with sand, and a marsh is planted behind that. That's one of the more common designs. So it's a created tidal marsh, a created salt marsh, ideally restoring ecosystem services that are being lost as we are losing our natural marshes. And so these things, when they're put in place, they help prevent coastal erosion, they replace habitat, and they replace a number of ecosystem services that natural marshes provide, among them nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment removals. They are an improved best management practice. That was a great segue from the last talk about BMPs. They are an approved BMP for meeting the Chesapeake Bay TMDL. But we still have pretty limited data to understand just how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment these systems are removing. The data the Bay program uses to calculate those removals are based on a limited number of studies, not all from, many of them are from more freshwater systems from all around the country. We still don't have a real full set of these direct measurements of these removals. And therefore the existing tools that we have for calculating removals are very limited. So next slide. We set out with our former student Emma to develop a decision support modeling tool for end users to directly compute these removals by living shorelines that would be validated against field measurements in the lower Chesapeake. We did that through a combination of field measurements in Virginia, development and calibration of this underlying ecosystem simulation model, and then development of a user-friendly interface for that model and provision of that model online, which basically puts the idea is to put this tool into the hands of the end users. And this was all funded by kind of an unusual source, the car maker, the Honda Marine Science Foundation. So we were really lucky to have their funding. Next slide. I mentioned we needed data, right? First thing you got to do is get some data to build the model. And plus we just don't have enough information on these removals from observations. And so we set out at these 6 living shoreline sites across Virginia. They span 6 to 20 years since time of construction at the time we sampled. And we conducted seasonal sampling back in 2022 and a little bit the year before, so spring, summer, and fall. So those were the data that we were gathering. Next slide. Data were used to develop this ecosystem model to calculate the NPS removals by the living shoreline. And so what you're looking at here, this spaghetti diagram of the model. The model's in the middle. The middle of this diagram is the model of the living shoreline, and that is situated between these arrows on either side, right? So imagine this living shoreline at the coast, at the coastal interface between the upland and tidal waters. We have nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment coming in from the upland watershed, whether it's overflow, stormwater, groundwater. And at the same time, we have the same constituents coming in the tidal water on the right side of the diagram, coming in twice a day every time the sites flood. And so we set out to specify those inputs. And then in the middle is what we're actually modeling. And so what we're doing, what this model does is over the annual cycle from January to December, an average year, it's simulating the nitrogen and phosphorus uptake by the plants, the removal and burial of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment down in the soils. So you're looking, you see the 2 species of cordgrass that we usually get these marshes, Spartina patens on the left, Spartina alterniflora on the right. We're simulating the uptake of these things into the biomass, both above ground and below ground. We're simulating down in the sediment, the burial of those things, the recycling of those constituents, as well as the permanent removal of nitrogen by N2 gas. That's denitrification. In addition to what's going on in the marsh grass and the sediments, we're simulating what the other organisms are doing. So these systems are covered with a film of algae called benthic microalgae. So where the model keeps track of the nitrogen and phosphorus being taken up and buried by those. And these systems are also colonized by filter feeding bivalves, particularly red mussels and eastern oyster, especially on these rock sills. And so the model is simulating their dynamics, their removal of these constituents as well. So if you go to the next slide, just to give you a sense, that I'm not focusing on showing you a lot of data, but just to give you a flavor of what this tool is doing. So the big data slide here is to show you that we do root this model in the observations. And so this is the calibration slide. Each of these 4 panels is showing you model predictions over the year, so from January to December. And what you're looking at, the blue line is the model prediction, and the orange bars are those 3 seasonal our set of 3 seasonal observations. On the top is the predicted and observed biomass for the 2 species of cordgrass. On the bottom left is the biomass of that film of algae on the sediments, the benthic microalgae, and in the lower right is that rate of denitrification, permanently removing nitrogen and shunting it to the atmosphere. And in all cases, the model is doing really well, right? It's reproducing the observations very nicely, so we have confidence in using it. So next slide. At the end of the day, this is what we get, right? The model is telling us after simulating this as a function of site-specific characteristics for the systems we calibrated the model to, we have these annual per square meter removals of NP and sediment, TSS, total suspended solids, so we're talking about sediments there. And we look at that overall by the site. We break that up into the habitats, so by sill, by low marsh and high marsh. And we can also break that up by the removal pathway. So are these things going into the plants? Are they going into the sediments? Are they being removed to the atmosphere, et cetera? They're going into the bivalves. So we have these removals. Next slide. What Emma, our student, did with, oh no, I'm sorry. I forgot. There's a slide just to, no, you're fine, Tara. Stay on the next slide. That's, yep. So with the model in place, the next step, development of this user interface, what we've done now to put this in the hands of end users, we have this landing page where you pick your site, you pick your region of the bay that your living shoreline is in, click the animation. So once you get into the site you're looking for and you can drill down into a more specific location within each of these regions, you then get to this user-defined input page. So you're asked questions, how old is this living shoreline? What are its dimensions, its length, its width, et cetera? What are bivalve densities? And if you don't know it, these are defaults for Virginia, so they should be pretty realistic. And so with those user-defined inputs for your specific installation, you would click that run the model button and you'd go to the next slide. So click the animation one more time and you would get the output page. And so the model is showing you how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment the shoreline is removing. Those are the main bars on the left. The pie graphs on the right break that out by habitat, sill, low marsh, high marsh, and by removal pathway, marsh grass, denitrification, oysters, what have you. There's a button to click that. It'll copy all of the output to your computer so you can paste it into Excel or something and have the results. So the idea here is to have this now working in the hands of end users to use it. Right now it's a beta version. We'll be releasing the formal version shortly. One last thing for me, if you go to the next slide, what can one do with this information? So we've been looking at sort of at the larger scale, how do the living shoreline removals compare to those two inputs that we want to control? What's coming into the tidal water and what's coming from the watershed? And so on the left, you're looking at, on average, the darker blue bar is sort of average tidal nitrogen loads in lower Virginia coming in per square meter every year to these coastal environments. And on the right, the light blue bar is what a living shoreline, an average living shoreline is removing. So these living shorelines are able to remove about a third of the nitrogen and the phosphorus coming in from the tide. So they're a pretty effective filter of that water. They can remove 100% of the sediment in that water. And then on the right is how many acres of living shoreline you would need in the little land river segments that the Chesapeake Bay program uses. So the really small coastal segments all around the bay. This is how many acres you would need on average, the dash bars or the medians, to remove all the nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment coming out of these watersheds. And if you look at the dash bars, those are the medians. You actually get on a scale that might be doable. You need maybe 10 acres on average of living shoreline in a particular system to get all of the nitrogen out from the watershed input. So that gets to be on the scale of something that's tractable. So these are the removals sort of at this big scale. And we envision you could equally easily apply this to removals from stormwater loads specifically. But Molly now is going to take it over and talk about, I've been talking about kind of the large scale. She's going to talk about some site-specific applications.
Thank you, Mark. Can we move on to the next slide? Is the feedback coming from your computer, Mark, or is it from mine?
Yeah, we've definitely got some feedback going on. So we can mute you guys. Go ahead and chat one more time, Molly.
Yeah, is that better?
Yep, that works. And just want to reiterate for everyone, if you have questions for the amazing professors at VIMS and ODU, please put them in the chat, because immediately following Molly, we're going to let Joe from CBF present, and then we'll answer everyone's questions after that. Thank you. Go ahead, Molly.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, so this is just a quick example of how you could actually apply this model to stormwater loads on a very specific level. And so what I'm showing here on the slide is from another project. This was a NOAA-funded project to look at how you can place nature-based features in the landscape to intercept water between buildings and the landscape. And so each of those pathways is an inundation pathway, but it shows the direction in which stormwater would flow from that building specifically into the waterway. And each color is specific to the building. You can see that. So we could trace those and say, okay, we can see where the installation of a living shoreline would intercept stormwater from multiple buildings. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So here's an example of an area. Oh, it's not showing up. There was a highlight going along the shoreline there. And it just doesn't seem like it's showing up. But anyway, if you install the living shoreline between the sets of bushes on that stretch of shoreline, you'd intercept the water from 3 different houses. And so we're mostly talking about nitrogen and phosphorus pollution in this talk, but this would actually be true for plastic pollution too, if it would be intercepted from the stormwater runoff. Next slide. And then we have actually taken that information and we deliver it on a .va in a layer that ranks the living shorelines. So the darkest color is the most benefits provided, both in terms of it's protecting the most houses, but it's also providing other benefits like habitat and that kind of thing. And if you click on any of those living shorelines, you can see. So we can take the specific information. So in the bottom side, it's showing the potential living shoreline that I clicked on would be 1,600 feet long by 8 feet wide. So you could take that information and put it into the calculator, and you can calculate the specific removal. So you can see, how many houses this stormwater is being intercepted, and then you can see specifically how those removals are contributing to the from the living shoreline design. All right, next slide. I think that is all we had. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Honestly, just amazing information that you all shared. Like, I know that you all could talk for hours about your amazing work, and I could too. And so while we definitely want to allow everyone to ask you all questions, I know Molly has to leave at 2:30. So if you have questions directly for Molly, I'm going to give just a few minutes for Molly. There are some going on in the chat I can see, but it looks like those are more questions for other folks. So if you have questions for Molly, now's the time. Otherwise, we are going to move on to Joe from CBF in just a minute. But it does look like, Molly, this pertains to you, this question. Are the potential locations for living shorelines focused on residential areas?
Yeah, they're not. They're actually anywhere that a living shoreline would be suitable for installation. So that was the Elizabeth River I was showing. And there are a number of industrial areas there too, where living shorelines could be installed. And so the parameters and dimensions for those are there.
Awesome. That's good to know. Thank you so much. Any other questions for Molly? And so Dr. Brush, Dr. Wang, and Dr. Harris are going to stay with us, and we are going to allow Joe Wood from Chesapeake Bay Foundation to give his presentation. But while I'm getting that set up, if you all have questions for Molly before she leaves at 2:30, please go ahead and raise your hand, and our facilitators can help you address those while I introduce Joseph Wood. He's also a doctor, PhD, and a senior scientist at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. So in the essence of time, Joe, I'll let you give a more formal introduction if you like, and I will move this along to your presentation. Are you with us, Joe?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. Yes, thanks everyone for this opportunity to talk about something I'm excited about in Bay restoration land. And just my background, I've been with the Bay Foundation for about 10 years. And I went to school for ecosystems ecology and studied, modeling and nutrient issues, water quality and fisheries. Since I've been at CBF, kind of I spend a lot of time thinking about how we operate as a state, how we invest in programs and where efficiencies are, and how we're able to essentially throw money at water quality problems, and how those programs work. Particularly focused on nutrients is a big part of my work. And today I'm going to be talking about this question about, is it time for something new? And, where are we going moving forward when thinking about non-point source pollution, and kind of how we operate in terms of investing in nutrient reductions. And so first, can you go to the next slide? I'll talk about two programs that we have in the stormwater space that are really important and that we're really supportive of, and we think continue need to be funded. The first of those is the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, which started in 2014. To date, there's been about $200 million of projects. About half these projects tend to be stream restoration projects. The other are some type of approved Chesapeake Bay program, BMP. We get cost efficiencies for phosphorus, generally in the range of 10 to 30, it might stray from that. They don't fund anything over $50,000 a pound of phosphorus. Nitrogen, they haven't been tracking as long, but generally it's about $4,000 per pound. These are closely connected with local government MS4 requirements. You're not required to be an MS4 in order to get these grants, but there's a lot of motivation for MS4s who have nutrient reduction requirements in their permit to go after these grants. And I think it supports a lot of the work that's done to achieve those. And they're specifically focused at local government level. And I actually started my career working at DEQ in the SLAF department. I've been close to it for several years, and I've tracked it through the past decade or so. And I think it's sort of a known quantity. I think it supports good work. We kind of know what kind of work that it's going to achieve, and we have to keep funding it to support kind of the work that happens at the local government space to deal with stormwater, particularly for retrofits. So don't want to say anything to the extent that would make you believe that I don't support that fund, and I think it's a good fund for us to have. Go to the next slide, please. The next fund that we have in Virginia, a way we throw money from the state, to address developed nutrient loads, is the VCAP program. And, of course, this is a program that helps individual landowners or homeowners association essentially deal with nutrient reductions on their own property. And again, it's a great program. It helps connect incentives of water quality with what people do in their backyard. And I think it's been a really valuable program that's been growing over the years. I think there's an interesting future to the VCAP program. And I've always thought about the VCAP program as there's this confounding issue with it, because generally on paper, when it's summarized, or I've seen it summarized by the agencies, it's viewed as there's some lack of cost efficiency. Like SLAF tends to do better if you look at the cost efficiency numbers for nitrogen and phosphorus associated with it. But at the same time, almost everyone I know that works in like the nutrient space sort of has this agreement that if you're going to do something to address nutrients, one of the most cost-effective things we can do is think about how much fertilizer people apply to their lawns, and making decisions like that. And I think VCAP actually kind of moves the needle on that better than other things. And I'm not sure if the cost comparisons, if something falls apart when it comes to like thinking about that behavioral type change or something in the modeling, but I always found that sort of hard to imagine, is putting those two together, that this program on paper doesn't look great from an efficiency perspective, but yet it kind of hits it home from people's behavior. So again, I just wanted to point out, like, this is a great program. We want this program to continue. And I don't want to take away anything from the rest of my presentation to think differently than that. Okay, go ahead with the next slide. With that said, we've been asking for a while and thinking about basically where we are as a Chesapeake Bay partnership, where we are in our effort to reduce nutrients to the Bay. And there's a lot of research, a lot of scientific reports, a lot of experts coming together and sort of asking this question, how has our non-point source effort been going? And I think that there's been a number of like fundamental obstacles and challenges and I don't want to say downfalls, but some issues that we face in this non-point source space. And part of that comes from looking at what does progress look like in terms of water quality in places where we've managed for non-point. And oftentimes, maybe what our models are suggesting and how much work that we think we're doing doesn't correspond with what we're actually seeing in the water column. And, you know, I think this connects back to some of our other presentations from today in a way that I find engaging, but it is this idea that uncertainty in our ability to address non-point sources, whether it's living shorelines or stormwater BMPs, is paramount. Like, uncertainty is everywhere. And I think that people find that over and over and over again when we try to assess decisions, management actions, how we put money into things. And yet our ability to deal with that uncertainty in the context of our incentives programs is, I think, somewhat minimal. It's really a struggle to deal with uncertainty in our current framework. So, you know, the CESA report that came out that was a group of experts, scientists, managers that spent, you know, almost 5 years writing this report and kind of saying, how are we doing in terms of bay restoration? They essentially suggested, you know, we're going to have to try some new things. We're going to have some new policies. If we want to be successful in the non-point source space, it's probably going to take not just more of what we're doing, but new things. And that's what has sort of given rise to the rest of my presentation today, is this idea of thinking about motivating people differently and focusing on outcomes. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. To point to a specific example of this uncertainty, this comes from Marcus Aguilar, who was at Virginia Tech, and his presentation is several years old. He's presented this at Environment Virginia many years ago, and he's done a lot of work in this area. But it focused on how well various stormwater BMPs perform, and this is also then overlaid with how much credit they receive in kind of the state crediting system. And the takeaway I had from that work, and that I think that was paramount there, was that uncertainty is really, really large. We give a singular credit, you know, for practices that is based on a number of assumptions that are scientific and valid, and like no one's to discredit them. But our single value for how efficient we label a practice and then what the practices actually look like, there's a huge amount of variability there. Sometimes to the extent that the practices yield effects that increase nutrient loads instead of decreasing them. And I think that there are examples of this throughout non-point source management. And that when we look at how an individual BMP performs, there's just so much variability there that can occur for many different reasons. And sometimes we're not, I think, capable of dealing with that. Okay, go on to the next slide. And in our current framework, you know, how do we measure performance? CAST is really the tool that we used. And if you're not familiar with CAST, the Chesapeake Assessment Scenario Tool, this is essentially the link with the Chesapeake Bay model that dictates how much credit do you achieve for a given exer. And it's an easy tool to use. But the question about like whether it's the best tool and maybe is it the only tool that we use, I think is coming into more and more conversations. And you know, we think about performance, I think, in sort of a singular way, or we have for the past 15 years. And once you hit that Chesapeake Bay credit, that's the nutrient benefit, and there's really no negotiating or thinking about anything beyond that. Okay, go on to the next slide. So just to talk a little bit more about CAST, I think I lost a picture here. There's supposed to be a very granular view when you look at under that close-in view box of the second one. But anyway, so like, you know, when we think about CAST, like it's a modeled view of the world, and it's some of the best modeling in the world, but there's a number of gaps associated with it. There's like no people actually live in the CAST world, and if they do, they're all behaving the exact same way. Like they're the way they operate, you know, human behavior is not really considered here. Variability from BMP to BMP doesn't really exist in the Bay model. And, you know, there's this lack of variability that's considered here. Also, pollutants are defined. The level of pollution that we have in any given area is defined at a grid scale, and that's the level of pollution, and it's really not variable. Go back to the previous slide, please. And so, the point here is that like we take, the world, which we know is incredibly variable, and we condense it into these average values. And as a result of that, we lose our ability to actually deal with the true uncertainty because we've defined these things. Our incentives come back to what's been defined and not maybe the true uncertainty associated with that. And the point of this is that this fund I'm getting ready to talk about, this Pay for Outcomes fund that we have a pilot for right now, a lot of experts, I think, agreed that we need to strive for something that lets us dig in to that gray space, that lets us think about more of these nuanced factors that are underneath CAST, that CAST may be an obstacle to dealing with. If you're viewing CAST as your measure of performance, you may never go into some of these other things. You may never go into the fact that, if you go from farm A to farm B, which might be, 100 feet, you can have drastic differences in nutrient performance between those two areas. And the same could be true for different yards, different homeowners' properties. And yet that variability gets lost. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. So the next point I just wanted to make here is this is just like my very basic diagram sketching the way kind of our stuff works today. And we have the Chesapeake Bay program, and the Chesapeake Bay program has these expert panels. They meet occasionally for, I don't know, a couple years at a time, potentially. And they bring a group of experts together. They summarize how well a BMP works, whatever it is. They use the studies available, and then it's sort of set in stone, at least until another expert panel occurs. And I don't want to say there's no innovation outside of what happens in those conversations, but as a partnership and what we do to measure nutrient reduction associated with non-point source, we are very boxed in to whatever the constraints of the BMP expert panels provide. The states are, they have to rely on BMP numbers to report up to determine what their credit is from EPA. The local governments have to follow the scripts of, what are the instructions associated with a specific BMP, and they have to hit those to achieve their credit. And I think that framework has been a huge obstacle to trying new things and being innovative. And we have BMP performance really as being a binary thing, as either you meet the criteria and you get the credit or you don't. And I think most people recognize that the world doesn't really look like that, and there's way more rooms for optimization and innovation. Okay, next slide. So I have this kind of simple diagram questioning how we invest our resources. And my point here is that, we can think about how we invest our resources with a couple different things in mind. We can think about like how much implementation we get done on one hand, and we can think about how much learning, like innovation, monitoring, our improved understanding that we can do on the other hand. And I think my takeaway from reviewing some of these reports and kind of like looking at the system for a while is that we're very, very heavy on implementation today. We value in our programs getting things done, and less so value is placed on learning and understanding whether they worked, and understanding, how they're performing, and, giving credence to whether it could be done a different way. And, I think the historical argument from this, and for good reason, is like measuring performance is expensive. And I definitely don't discredit that argument at all. Monitoring is really expensive. The more money you spend to go see if something works, the less money you have to spend. But if you take the long view on this, and you acknowledge that if we're doing things and maybe they're not working in the way we think they're working, and maybe they're not working at all, then spending money without understanding if it works can be really, really expensive too. It's just a matter of whether you realize it at the time. And the best analogy I can think about for this, there's probably a much better one. I was thinking about it though, like it's like being lost in the woods, and like you're trying to make your way home. And it's like you can spend your time trying to figure out where you should go, like which direction, or you can just start walking. And like, I don't think either one of those is a wrong thing to do. You want to probably do both, but you don't want to not think about either one of them either. And the whole point is, like, I think that we probably need to tilt a little bit more to understanding like if what we're doing is working and giving more incentives to do that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so motivating differently for nutrient reductions, right? This is sort of a goal here, is that we want to move towards actually having nutrient reductions be the thing that's on the table, and we're paying directly for that rather than a practice that's been prescribed with set a number of details. And we think there's a lot of opportunities for improvement here to expand what we're considering. You know, what are people willing to do to identify like key areas for targeting and generate interest in these programs and innovation. Okay, next slide. So in 2024, in the session of 2024, we had this in session for a couple of years. Delegate Bulva had a budget amendment that essentially established a pilot program, Chesapeake Bay Pay for Outcomes program, that came with $20 million. And it was a program that was essentially focused on trying to accomplish some of these goals that we've been talking about. And DEQ's administered this program over the past 2 years. I'm talking just like very briefly about some of the things they've found and maybe where we're going on some of this. So you can move to the next slide. So first, I did want to clarify several of the partners working on this. We did not call this a pay for performance program on purpose. I'm not sure we got the perfect name with pay for outcomes, but this was the reasoning. Pay for performance, there's a number of programs around the watershed. By themselves, when you connect like what the state pays to the benefit that it's achieved, there is value that in and of itself, even if it's model loads from CAST. And this idea is that like, you know, the state can throw money at a problem, and if their investment is proportional to the benefit, that drives efficiency, that drives a better way to operate. But pay for performance programs around the watershed often do not get to the assurance points that I mentioned earlier. If you are locked into the CAST framework and working only under CAST BMPs, that is a pay for performance program, but it doesn't get to this point of like, did it actually work? And so we came up with the name of pay for outcomes, and that was sort of the distinction behind that rationale, why it's not called pay for performance. But the point here was like that we wanted to open the box beyond CAST to say that like you're not limited to CAST, that you can measure performance in different ways, that you can, you know, allow for these new opportunities to consider different things. So just a note there. All right, next slide. So some of the key motivating points that we were hoping were like fundamental components to this program. One is targeting, and that's not to say that we don't target with our current work, but to think about the level of landscape variability that exists even at a fine scale. And there's been some really interesting stuff that suggests that, you know, very fine scale consideration of nutrients is really important. And oftentimes we don't have the capacity to deal with that scale in our current modeling program. So finding where the pollution exists and going after it with evidence is a key piece. Innovation, you know, allowing for new ways to do things that kind of open the box of the way we can approach a problem. And, you know, I think oftentimes people think about innovation as technology, and I think that could be included here. Like, is there a new device, a manufactured treatment device, or whatever it is? But I think even beyond that, the opportunities for innovation in the approach, in the incentive frameworks, in how we implement programs, how we bring people on board, that there's opportunities there too that in the past could have been blocked by, you know, what was prescribed in a BMP expert panel, but maybe there's an opportunity to do those. Also learning, like, you know, creating things like where we learn a lesson. You know, we think about like how efficient the programs we are implementing, like how efficient they are. You can look at a program like that tracked how efficient it was. And if it created something new and innovative, maybe like that individual project wasn't very efficient, but if it could direct the program in the future to do something it's never done before, like an innovation does, then, you know, that could be tremendously effective over the long term. And then this last piece is assurance and certainty. You know, the goal, one of the key goals of this program was to fund projects that were going to come to the table and really be able to provide a high level of confidence about how they were performing. So those were some of the key components. You can go to the next slide now. Okay, so year one of the pilot, there was 110 million in requests, only 19 million available for distribution, 1 million went to DEQ for the review process. Average cost efficiency was 36 pounds nitrogen, $36 per pound of nitrogen. There are only 2 local government applicants. It was eligible, I'm not sure I've mentioned this, it was eligible to all entities It didn't have to just be a local government, so there were private entities as well. Neither of the two local governments were funded, but they did apply, and had 30 total applications. Next slide. And so some of the projects that were funded included, there was some work focusing on nitrogen imbalances on dairy farms and working like with specific farmers that were found to have a high level of imbalance. There was a bunch of work associated with ammonia filtration from poultry farms, where essentially they were sort of slurping ammonia gas out of poultry farms and measuring what they captured. So they had a clear idea of how much nitrogen they're pulling out. There were some oyster restoration projects and septic disconnection projects, a few land conversion projects, and then there were some urine diverting toilets. There was a couple other projects as well with forested buffers, but these were some of the projects that were included there. Okay, next slide. So, I think that like the fact that DEQ got this program out the door within like, I don't know, 7 months and already has these projects, I thought that was an incredible accomplishment. And I think there were definitely a number of bumps along the road that came. I thought it was a really difficult program to administer in the sense that, in the past, we've had CAST and the Bay framework to lean on to say that, what does performance look like? And we have this tool that's really clear that allows us to do that. And when you stray away from that, it's hard. And I think that the technical review committee really struggled with that because they got lots and lots of different projects with lots and lots of different types of evidence, and that was difficult. I will say though, I think that's actually like really important work, even though it's difficult. That struggling with the evidence like that makes DEQ a better agency, and I'm excited about that. But going forward, I think that's something that's really going to have to be addressed and have to be dealt with, and we're going to have to support that type of evaluation. So one of the things we're looking for is to codify this fund, to make it a permanent fund and have more consistent solicitations of this fund. Also, there was, I think, providing clear guidance on how the projects are going to be evaluated. I think I saw this with the SLAF program back in 2014, but I think it's really difficult when a fund comes around for the first time for people to know what is going to hit and what is the state going to be interested. What are the key points they need to hit? And I think that's going to be important for future issues. I have a bullet here about addressing leakage and additionality. And I think all the projects that were funded, there were benefits, but there are some projects where you question, do they have a net effect? And what I mean by that, if there's a farm, for instance, that has a bunch of corn, and you take that corn out of production and convert that land to something, but the whole incentive structure of the price of corn and, maybe the farmer has land somewhere else, like, did that really result in that level of reduction, or did it just move things around? And that type of consideration of leakage and additionality, I think, is something that there's probably going to have to be more thought put into about how we're able to implement a project that you can, have a better feeling about whether there's leakage or not. Stable funding. So I think this fund has the opportunity to be able to, once there's more consistent revenue, to generate more reception from partners and more brainstorming. And I think people will feel better about leaning into opportunities like this if they feel like it's going to be there for the long haul. So I think that's important as well. And then finally, I think finding how we expand the partnership that's willing to come to the table for stuff like this. I mentioned there's 2 local governments, and this year everything was open to everyone, and so you had ag competing with stormwater, at least in the sense that how expensive it is to get funded to do ag work versus stormwater. And you can make the case that maybe that shouldn't be the case. Like, that might make it hard for us to compete with addressing loads in urban areas. But I think finding ways for people to participate in this and incentives them to do so is going to be important, particularly local governments, because local governments have their work cut out for them with MS4 requirements, with nutrient reductions, and they have to get to their goals. And I'm not sure by going outside the box here, we're at the same time allowing them to check their goals. And so things like that about how we engage partners is going to be really important too. So that was my last slide. I think the fund's really exciting. I think we're going to hear more about it soon, and hopefully we're able to continue it forward.
That was awesome. Looks like we've got a different slide up there right now. Is that your screen, Christina?
That is not my screen. No.
Okay, I think Dr. Wang's still sharing his presentation. So you just need to put yours on, Christina.
Okay.
That was amazing, Joe. We are so thankful to have you here representing the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and all of your amazing work. I am so thankful for all of you. I'm going to hand this over to Christina. So she is going to be able to chat with you all. We are still welcoming questions. I know there's a couple questions that were put in the chat while Christina's getting her presentation on the screen. One of the questions that we saw, Mark, are you still there? Yeah, great. So there was a question about how do you incorporate the level of surrounding development into the LSNP's calculator, not calendar. And I wanted to see if you could address that.
Yeah, I did put a response in and managed to bungle it because I hit return before I was done with it. But essentially, right now it's sort of a very uncoupled way we do it. So the model is simulating an average living a living shoreline based on our sites, which are all pretty similar in their upland loads. So we take what the living shoreline is saying that marsh is doing, and we're comparing it to all of the loads that we've attained from the Bay program model. So that's not a direct coupling. And that works fine for where we are right now because all of our sites are similar. But the kind of the next iteration of this thing is to dynamically couple that so that those loads from the upland in a different, wherever you are, spatially explicitly, it sees what that load is and the marsh can actually respond to that. So a marsh with a higher loading rate might take up a bit more than one in a more rural landscape. So we're not quite to that piece yet. But we're doing that comparison right now from the Bay program loads. The tidal side, the tidal connections are actually dynamically established now because that's a quicker thing to do. And so the model is, depending on where you are in the Bay, the model is simulating the appropriate tidal inputs of those materials based on water quality measurements.
Awesome. Christine, there is one more question that I'll go ahead and pose real quick. So this is for you, Dr. Wang, from Karen Brown. Is the saltwater getting into the groundwater in the region in your presentation?
Yes, based on some locations, we already see this groundwater flooding. I talked to some city engineers in Norfolk. So they told me we have some locations with some subsurface facilities have been abandoned. So that's due to this saltwater intrusion and groundwater flooding issues. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that candid answer. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Brush or Wang, as well as for Dr. Wood from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation? Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to put them in the chat. And Karen Brown, go for it.
Yeah, I hate to be so talkative today and use up your time. Mr. Wood, Dr. Wood, he very impressive, and it's just amazing to me that there's so much money involved there, and I just want those big figures, in this field to know that we are struggling to address the plastic pollution problem, and I just want it to be on the table where all this money is going, because we could certainly use a federal government program, or even a CBF, which has almost become bigger than the EPA, thank goodness, to get the message out like nationally, as we used to have with Woodsy Owl and Keep America Beautiful. They were powerful messages that reached everyone. And there's so much I could say, and I'm sure others could too. But I just heard this morning that the Woodsy Owl is being relocated to batteries, which is fine. But it's like we don't have a national message. We don't have a lot of money to keep these plastics out of the water as far as campaigns, letting the public know. There are so many people who have no idea about the gyres, or that a straw in your parking lot, as I said earlier, goes down to the ocean. But he was very impressive, and I look forward to re-listening to this presentation. Thank you.
All right, Christina, take it away. And again, y'all, if you have questions, put them in the chat. You'll be able to you can send questions directly to me. We'll make sure they get answered by our amazing presenters. So I know we went over a little bit on time with the last few presentations, but they were amazing. Let me say one last thing. There were some tweaks in some of the presentations, and that was basically just the conversion that went into Google Slides. So apologies to all of the amazing speakers. You guys really did a great job. We appreciate you so much. And I'll hand it over to you, Christina. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. And thank you to the CVW staff for putting this workshop together today. Thank you to the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program for supporting this workshop and supporting our work and the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. And of course, thank you to our amazing speakers today. I learned a lot of things that I never knew I needed to know, and now I know these things. So thank you for educating those of us. I think there's a lot of different walks of work here. Those of us that are, in plastic pollution prevention, education, all the way to the stormwater management side of things, and the modeling and the the science behind it. And it's been really a great workshop. I hope all of you feel the same way. You have your assignment. We will be sending out the link to that Google Doc again, and you can submit your comments. We want to make sure that everyone that wants to be involved in the update to the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan has the opportunity to do so. So you've had some great conversations today. We've been taking notes, and with that Google Doc, we'll be able to get more thoughts and comments from you. And I think Joe said he would like to get those in by next Friday, so we can add those thoughts and comments to our workload here with updating this plan. We are almost out of time, so I just wanted to give some shameless plugs for Clean Virginia Waterways. This is the International Coastal Cleanup Month. We do run the International Coastal Cleanup here in Virginia. We call it the Virginia Waterways Cleanup. You met Emily earlier. She is the one that is running this thing this year with Sasha. And Sasha is actually in the other room right now. I can hear her taping boxes of supplies that are going out this afternoon. We do provide you with supplies and support to lead a cleanup. If you would rather just join a cleanup, I've put links on this slide here. Emily, maybe you can put those in the chat as well, and we'll make sure we put them in the email, the follow-up email that we send out. We would love to hit 5,000 volunteers this year. So we definitely would like to get some of you to join or lead a cleanup and collect that data. We've all heard a lot about data today. I've shown you the top 10 from last year. It's really important data to collect so that we can learn more about the plastic pollution and litter that's affecting our state. And another one, if you want to get on the water with us, on the 27th, hopefully, weather cooperating, we'll be heading down to Long Creek, which is part of the Lynn Haven River, and we will be paddling together. You can either do a 1 mile or a 4 mile paddle, and that is a fundraiser event for us. It's also a great community event, and I'm sure we're going to be picking trash up along the way. You bring a kayak, canoe, paddleboard, whatever you like to paddle. Join us. We're going to have an after party afterwards and celebrate our waterways and keeping them clean. Some sponsorship opportunities if anyone's interested. And unless anyone else has any questions, I'm going to give you 5 minutes of your lives back. And thank you all again for joining us. Really appreciate you. Thank you, CVW crew, speakers, and CZM. That is all.
Thanks, everybody. You're the best. We appreciate you. Any last minute questions before we close out?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Mark, if you're still on. Thanks to Joe. You guys were amazing. And Christina, thanks for leading the charge. And Zach, you too, and Will, if they're on.
Thank Zach for your guidance too. I think you're the only one of us that's been to one of these before. I think we did all right. What do you think?
I think it was great. incredible job by Tara organizing everything, and
Yeah.
Christina leading us through. Fantastic.
Whoop, whoop. Onward and upward.
Next up, paddle. All right, guys. Sasha's busy taping in there. I can hear her. Everything came in today. All the supplies just showed up during the meeting.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good timing.
Woohoo! I'll be
Yeah.
there in a few minutes.
Yeah, the FedEx guy was like, I didn't even know you guys were back here. He had a lot of boxes.
Awesome. All right, bye guys.
Bye, guys. Yep.
Bye. Need me for anything else right now, Christina?
I don't think so. You're gonna look over that summary so I can send it in. And not today. I think maybe tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Are you working tomorrow?
Not tomorrow. I'm gonna work tonight, so I'll go over the report tonight. Then I have to respond to a couple questions on the outreach plan.
Okay.
Tomorrow I've got a couple calls, but I'll be with Ruby most of the day, and then Thursday morning back at the computer.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Available if you need me.
Will do. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, Joe. Good job moderating. Daniel, you're still on here? I'm guessing, yeah. All right.